I became the god of light. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 78, Boiling Fish. Earthenware bowls and small pots, yellowish-brown in color, came into view. A crowd quickly gathered around, especially those who had participated in the making process, who were particularly excited. I made this. It's a success. Haha, me too. They recognized their own creations at a glance and cheered. However, some were disappointed, as a small portion of the pottery had cracked, clearly indicating it hadn't been fired properly. With Suyun's permission, they held their creations, their faces filled with joy and a sense of accomplishment. Clay is truly amazing, I want to make one too. Those who hadn't participated showed surprise and envy, a hint of eagerness in their hearts. Suyun glanced at the small pottery he had made. It resembled a large iron pot from the countryside, only much smaller. He turned to those around him and instructed them to wash the pots and bowls clean and, incidentally, to kill a clean fish. What is the priest doing? The burly man with fangs asked the short, thin man beside him, puzzled. Just wait and see. The priest might be teaching us something, maybe even the will of God. A wise glint flashed in Qing's cloudy eyes. God? Fang was startled. He exchanged a glance with a middle-aged leader standing beside them, both of them showing anticipation. They knew that anything related to God was never simple, every matter was profound. It was just that they, as mortals, were too dull to understand God's meaning beforehand. Not only the three of them, but others who saw the priest's unusual actions also vaguely guessed what was going on. The news spread like wildfire, and amidst the expectant gazes of the crowd, the pot and fish were prepared and brought over. Suyun glanced at the pot and fish the two men were carrying, pondered for a moment, and then turned to look for something. Soon, he found 3 stones, each about 10 centimeters high. He arranged the 3 stones in a triangle on the ground and piled some firewood in the stone pit. As the flames lit, the earthenware pot was placed on the stones. The earthenware pot was heated, and smoke rose from it, indicating it had reached a certain temperature. It's a pity there's no oil, Suyun said with a hint of regret, reaching out to take the gutted and cleaned black carp. He glanced at the fish, which was longer than the pot itself, and then, a white light emanated from his hand, quickly condensing into the shape of a light blade. With a single horizontal slice, he easily cleaved the fish in 2. Before everyone's eyes, the fish was tossed directly into the pot. Sizzle, sizzle, the sound of the fish frying filled the air, accompanied by a unique aroma. Compared to grilled fish, this smell was far more enticing, more intense, making everyone's mouths water. Those nearby immediately began to sniff desperately. It smells so good, how can this fish smell so good? Just a slight sniff made even the grilled fish they usually ate seem unappetizing. Their eyes and hearts were only fixed on the black carp frying in the earthenware pot. Seeing the fish still frying, Suyun turned to the people beside him and said, "Fetch a pot of water with a clay pot." "I'll do it." Fang, looking curious, pushed forward and took the task. He picked up a clay pot from the ground nearby and ran towards the river. "What's the priest doing? Why does he need water?" "Yeah, I don't understand." Those who had never cooked before scratched their heads, not quite understanding what the priest was up to. "I forgot to make a spatula." Suyun noticed the fish was a little burnt and felt a bit embarrassed. "Oh well," with a sigh, he calmly stretched out his hand, and a spatula formed of white light immediately appeared in his hand. He flipped the fish over after a few strokes. It actually worked quite well. The tribespeople looked at the luminous spatula in amazement, some even secretly memorized the design, waiting to make an exact replica later. Sizzle, sizzle because no oil was added, the black fish was a little sticky, but as time passed, the fish's own oil seeped out, combined with the caramelized aroma, creating an even more enticing smell. The fragrance filled the entire open space, making everyone's eyes fill with longing as they gazed at the grilled fish, their mouths practically watering. "Priest, the water you wanted?" Fang grinned, handing him a clay pot filled with water. He then moved his throat up and down, unable to resist asking, "Priest, could I have some of the fish?" "No," Su-yoon refused calmly. Seeing Fang's extremely disappointed expression, he was speechless and explained, "The fish isn't cooked yet." "Cooked?" Kwing, who was nearby, repeated in confusion. Su-yoon glanced at Kwing with slight surprise, and seeing the other's puzzled expressions, he said, "That's right, it's cooked." Without further explanation, he simply poured the clay pot into a small earthenware pot. Under the sunlight, the crystal clear water, shimmering with golden light, poured down. With a hissing sound, a large amount of steam billowed out. This scene left everyone dumbfounded. "What is the priest doing? He actually added water?" After the crowd reacted, they exclaimed in surprise, not quite understanding what was happening. The pot of fish, which had been perfectly fine, looked disappointing to most people after seeing the priest add water. They felt that the fish wouldn't taste so good anymore. Kwing, among the crowd, also frowned deeply. He had initially trusted his intuition, thinking that the priest's strange actions might be a divine command, but now, seeing this, he was no longer so sure. Su-yoon ignored the disappointed and bewildered crowd and calmly scooped up some fish. The water in the small earthenware pot, just poured in, immediately turned milky white, as if milk had been added, with an enticing aroma and a beautiful appearance. The fish soup was still heating up, and Su-yoon thought that it might not taste very good like this. He stood up, preparing to get the snowflake salt that was left over from yesterday's trade with the traveling merchant. He stopped the tribesmen who wanted to follow and left alone. Now, everyone's expressions were even more confused. When Su-yoon returned, he was carrying a small bag of salt, with about half a finger's width of salt remaining at the bottom. The tribespeople stared at the small bag in surprise, and some sharp-eyed people noticed the white substance inside and exclaimed, "It's salt! What a divine gift!" The story of salt as a divine gift had long been circulating in the tribe, but some people were seeing it for the first time and their eyes widened in astonishment. Chapter 79, It's So Good. Su-yoon watched as the milky white fish soup, now boiling and bubbling, sprinkled some salt into it. He then stirred it, the white light recondensing from the spatula. Seeing this divine gift added to the soup, and the aroma wafting from the boiling water, the initially disappointed crowd couldn't help but salivate. "Even with water, it still smells so good, we want to eat." Those who had initially thought the added water would ruin it suddenly hesitated. Bubbles continued to rise. Su-yoon thought for a moment and decided to cook it for another half hour. Fish soup doesn't mind being cooked too long, in fact, it might even taste better. Half an hour later, in the small earthenware pot, the rich, milky white fish soup bubbled, its aroma filling the air. Within 2 meters, the tribespeople, drawn by the aroma, formed a circle around it. This was only because Su-yoon had ordered them not to come any closer, otherwise, they might have even put their mouths to the pot. "All right," Su-yoon suddenly said calmly. The tribesmen perked up at his words, all staring intently at the priest, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. Su-yoon ignored them, instead using a spatula to scoop up some soup and taste it himself. Delicious. The moment it entered his mouth, a rich, savory flavor assaulted his taste buds. Compared to modern fish, this fish, perhaps due to its otherworldly origins, not only had very little fishy smell, but its unique umami flavor was also much stronger. "Priest, let me try some," the chief, growing impatient, couldn't help but speak up. Fang, standing beside him, nodded as well. He wanted to try it too. Su-yoon glanced at the eager crowd, finally looking at the chief and Fang, his lips twitching slightly. He chuckled and gestured towards the ground. "Aren't there bowls?" The chief and Fang's eyes lit up, and they quickly looked down at the ground. Sure enough, 5 or 6 small, washed ceramic bowls were laid out. Without thinking too much, the two quickly grabbed their small bowls and scooped some of the milky white fish soup into the pot. They brought the bowls to their lips, the aroma of the soup filling their nostrils, and eagerly took a sip. The others stared intently at them, wondering if the fish was really as delicious as it smelled. But the moment it entered their mouths, they both cried out in pain, having been scalded by the soup. The others were startled, thinking something was wrong, but the two seemed oblivious, completely absorbed in the delicious soup. "Delicious, it tastes amazing," the leader and Fang's eyes lit up, smacking their lips and savoring the lingering umami flavor. The rich umami, combined with the slight saltiness of the snowflake salt, blended together perfectly, bringing out the full flavor of the fish. Furthermore, the black fish itself was of excellent quality, and the two were completely captivated the moment they tasted it. Without a word, they blew on the soup briefly before gulping down half a bowl. After finishing, they exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with hostility, and immediately turned to stare at the remaining soup. Really? Is it really that good? The others, who had been hesitant, couldn't sit still any longer and crowded forward. They wanted to try it too, to see what made their leaders react like that. Before the crowd could push forward, Qing quietly scooped half a bowl of soup from the bowl and then silently retreated, his movements fluid and effortless. Suyun twitched his lips again, decisively withdrawing from the fray, and stood at a distance, silently watching them fight over the soup. On the outskirts of the crowd, Qing took a deep breath, blew on the soup, and then put it in his mouth. The result, his eyes widened slightly, and then he eagerly gulped down the rest of the soup. The freshness and saltiness of the fish made him realize for the first time that water could taste so good. At the same time, looking at the empty bowl, he secretly regretted not filling it with more water. He also understood why the priest had added water, so that's why. Truly worthy of being a god, he smiled bitterly and sighed. I actually used my shallow thinking to guess the god's purpose. Really, in his mind, only a god could come up with such a method. Ordinary people certainly couldn't think of it so quickly, especially since Tao had just appeared. The priest's obvious purpose was clearly not normal. Therefore, there was only one truth. It must be the great god who wanted to teach them this method of boiling through the priest. Having filled in the blanks, and deeply moved by the god's painstaking efforts, his face showed piety and admiration. Suyun's eyes were strange, he subconsciously glanced at Qing, whose expression was odd in the distance. Just now, he discovered that this former priest named Qing, like the old priest, had reached a level of clear devotion to him. What a strange fellow, he muttered. Including this guy, there were now 6 clear lines. At this moment, the other tribesmen also received some fish soup. After drinking the fish soup, regardless of gender, everyone's expression was similar. So delicious, this is the first time I've ever tasted anything so delicious. They swallowed the fish soup and exclaimed in praise. As they spoke, a group of people seemed to realize something, and their faces showed embarrassment. I was wondering why the priest added water before, now I understand. Me too, I feel like we were so silly just now. Yeah, I didn't expect that adding water would make the fish taste so good. Not only the fish soup, but even the fish meat was devoured by them, and even the bottom of the pot was clean. Everyone's face was full of lingering satisfaction, and they had the idea of continuing to eat. However, only a small number of them had this idea. Hundreds of people, that's far too many. Only a portion could actually taste it. Looking at the people with their faces full of praise and smiles, they felt a pang of envy, but also a sudden urge to punch someone. Once everyone calmed down, they all instinctively looked at the priest. After tasting this delicacy, their previously vague thoughts became clearer. Qing hesitated for a moment, then suddenly asked Suyun, "Priest, is this method from the divine religion?" The other spirits lifted upon hearing this. They shared the same thought. Thank you, and will you be in my heart for the 3,000 Kidian coins reward? Thank you, longer name to prevent duplicates for the 100 Kidian coins reward. Thank you to Hua's show for the 1,176 reading points reward. Thank you the beginning and the end of fate for the 999 reading points reward. Thank you looking to the ends of the earth for the 588 reading points reward. Thank you Changsing Yiru for the 100 reading points reward. Thank you Lone Wolf Under the Dawn for the 100 reading points reward. I'm so touched I could cry. So many rewards. I'm amazed. If you like chatting, you can join the book club. It was just created recently at the request of the book club members. You can encourage and motivate this lazy bum here. Cap QQ group. 432,611,972. Chapter 80, Chopsticks and Spoons. Suyun was taken aback, his expression turning somewhat strange. He realized he hadn't expected this. The believers' imaginations were still running wild. He could only vaguely reply, "Yes, you guessed correctly." As soon as he finished speaking, the tribespeople, having received confirmation, wore expressions of "I knew it, it really is a god. I knew this method must have been taught by the god. Thank God," including their leader. They all praised the god. In their hearts, the god was associated with all things incredible, even capable of many unimaginable feats. For example, cooking. Without the god, they didn't know how long it would have taken them to learn, so they were filled with immense worship and gratitude. Seeing that they had guessed correctly, Suyun went straight to the point. "This was indeed told to me by the god. The god wants you to learn this cooking method. Eating roasted food all the time will cause you physical discomfort. Using the cooking method can avoid this. After Su Yun finished speaking, hundreds of people fell into deep thought. God was right. After eating roasted meat for a while, my throat really feels a bit uncomfortable. I thought it was normal before. Me too, me. At this, some of the tribesmen raised their hands. Seeing so many of them feeling unwell after eating roasted meat, their reverence for the seemingly omniscient God grew even stronger. Not only fish can be cooked, you can try using meat too, Su Yun suddenly suggested. The tribesmen were taken aback, then all became excited. Yes, if fish could be cooked, then meat could too, and maybe it would even taste better? No sooner said than done, they quickly took the other 2 earthenware pots and bowls to wash. Then, one by one, they took pieces of fish or raw meat and, imitating Su Yun's method, formed a circle to start making fish and meat soup. The sizzling sound of fish and haired raw meat frying in the earthenware pots filled the air. The aroma wafted throughout the area, making the onlookers' mouths water. Priest, can I eat this directly? Shi Tao, who had just snatched the right to use the earthenware pot, swallowed hard, his mouth watering at the sizzling meat chunks inside. At this, the others perked up their ears, they too wanted to eat the fried meat. A hint of relief flashed in Su Yun's eyes. Finally, someone had realized. Indeed, the fried meat tasted quite good. Yes, he nodded slightly in agreement. The tribespeople were overjoyed, and someone immediately put a piece of the fried meat into their mouth. Delicious, the person exclaimed excitedly, covering their mouth and breathing out hot air. The others immediately sped up, and soon many had tasted the fried meat. It's really delicious, I want more. The taste of the fried meat had won them over, filling everyone who had eaten it with happiness. Qing took a piece of meat from a man from a tribe in the front mountain, then stared at the fried meat in his hand, lost in thought. He subconsciously put the fried meat in his mouth and chewed it. Yes, it tastes so good. His eyes were a little red for some reason. Compared to the raw meat they ate in the mountain tribe and the life of living in caves, he felt that this place was too good to be true, so good that it felt unreal. He even felt that the tribe would definitely get better and better in the future, and he firmly believed this under the leadership of the great god of light. Fang, who was next to him, looked at him strangely. Why did Qing seem to be about to cry? What's wrong? Nothing. Qing tried to remain calm, but after a while, he gave up and sighed, saying, all of this feels a little unreal. I'm so glad that our mountain tribe met the great god back then. We can live such a life now, and it will definitely get better in the future. Joining the Yanhuang tribe is definitely the luckiest moment for us, he murmured to himself. Fang, who was next to him, was stunned. He hadn't thought so much about it before, but now, after hearing Qing's words, he couldn't help but feel sentimental. He thought that what Qing said was really true. If he had to choose, he would rather give up the position of chief and lead his people to join the Yanhuang tribe. To be honest, he was initially disappointed after joining the tribe, but as time passed, thanks to the gods, he found the tribe was getting better and better. In just a short time, he experienced a life he could never have imagined before, and like Qing, he firmly believed that the tribe would only get better. He thought this, and longed for it with anticipation. Su Yun was unaware that his actions had made Fang and Qing so eager and expectant. He was currently frowning as he watched the tribesmen grabbing meat with black hands and turning it over with branches. After thinking for a moment, he walked to the kiln and took a thick piece of wood from the pile of firewood. Then, he returned to his original spot and sat down. It's time to teach them to use chopsticks. Speaking of chopsticks, Su Yun couldn't help but recall the history of the invention of chopsticks in Chinese civilization. It seemed to be during the Shang dynasty when Su Daji and King Zhou were eating, and King Zhou frowned because the food was scalding hot. In her haste to please King Zhou, Su Daji had a flash of inspiration and used a jade hairpin as chopsticks. Su Yun glanced again at the tribespeople happily grabbing meat with their black hands, and his resolve strengthened. Eating meat with bare hands was not only unhygienic but also detrimental to the tribe's image. With chopsticks, things were different. Not only was direct contact with food reduced, making it much more hygienic, but it also exuded a sense of civilization and elegance. After thinking this, a white light suddenly emanated from Su Yun's hand holding the wooden block. Then, amidst the exclamations of the tribespeople who had inadvertently witnessed it, the white light enveloped the wooden block. Pieces of wood were then shaved off, and in the blink of an eye, the wooden block transformed into a long wooden spatula, 7 pairs of chopsticks, and 3 soup ladles. The tribespeople, who were frying the meat, stopped what they were doing and stared in disbelief at the priest. What is the priest doing? What are those things? They were full of confusion. They knew how to use the longer one, but were unclear about the other two. Seeing that the tribespeople's gazes were all on him, Su-Yun pointed to the items with his right hand and explained them one by one. He pointed to the spatula and said, "This is called a spatula, you should know that, so I won't elaborate. This is called a spoon." Su-Yun picked up a wooden spoon and, amidst the tribespeople's puzzled expressions, walked to the earthenware pot where fish was cooking. He put it in the pot and ladled out a spoonful of fish soup. Seeing this, some of the more astute tribespeople suddenly understood. "So that's how it is." The others, not understanding, quickly asked questions, and after word spread, they all understood its use. Seeing that they understood, Su-Yun casually picked up the wooden spoon and placed it in a nearby stone bowl where people were eating meat. The stone bowl paused, startled. Su-Yun then began to introduce the last item. "This is chopsticks." He squatted down and used the chopsticks to pick up some meat. "This is..." The tribespeople stared at the priest's actions, stunned. "So that's what it's for." They suddenly understood, but then came confusion. Stone scratched his head, then asked sheepishly, "Priest, I think I understand, but isn't this a waste of time? We can use our hands just as well, it's even more convenient." He looked confused. Yet, the other hundreds of people also looked puzzled. They were used to using their hands. They found the spoon convenient, but the chopsticks were a bit of a hassle. Aren't hands better? Thanks to 001 feet for the 300 Kidian coins. Thanks to 116476602588268953 feet for the 100 Kidian coins. Thanks to for the 999 book coins. Thanks to for the 588 book coins. Thanks to for the 100 book coins. Thank you, everyone. While there are many people in the group urging me to update, welcome to join and send me blades, cross-dressing, cough wrong code 00. Chapter 81 The Dilemma of New Technique Development. Su-Yun knew they wouldn't be enthusiastic about learning to use chopsticks unless he used his trump card, so he said calmly, "God hates filth. Eating like this will not only make you sick, but it will also displease God." Upon hearing this, the tribespeople were completely stunned. Compared to their previous indifference, hearing it concerned God, they were all somewhat afraid of being disliked by God. "Then what about us, priest?" Yes, they didn't doubt the priest's words at all, because no one dared to lie in God's name. Their expressions were somewhat anxious. A subtle smile flashed in Su-Yun's eyes. He coughed a few times, his hand covering his mouth, and said seriously, "God said that from now on, you must bathe in the river at least once every 3 days. And you must use chopsticks and other utensils when eating." Hearing so many requirements, the tribespeople looked somewhat troubled. However, when they thought that it was the great God who wanted them to do this, and when they looked down at their bodies, which were indeed black and smelly, and considered the holy and noble appearance of the great God, they couldn't help but feel a little inferior in comparison. No wonder the gods didn't like them. They suddenly realized that compared to the holy, unblemished gods, they were as filthy as animals. It was no wonder the gods disliked them. At that moment, they resolved to bathe frequently and become clean, so the gods would surely like them again. "Priest, I promise I'll bathe properly from now on, and the gods will love me," a childish boy's voice rang out. Little Tiger stood beside Lee in the crowd, his little face full of determination. Seeing that even a child like Little Tiger spoke faster than them, the other tribespeople began to chime in. "Priest, don't worry, we will." "That's right." Su-Yun nodded slightly, seeing that they had indeed listened. He didn't want his tribespeople to remain in this filthy state. Not only would they get sick, but the arrival of itinerant merchants would also tarnish the tribe's image. To make things better, he had given them a big stick, so he would also give them a little something extra. Addressing his people, he explained to the chopsticks, "These things are related to the gods, perhaps the gods have even used them." The moment he finished speaking, the eyes of hundreds of people changed. They stared intently at the chopsticks and spoon in the priest's hands, unwilling to look away even slightly. If before they had only learned to use chopsticks to please the gods, now, hearing that the gods might have used them, or even created them, filled them with excitement. They couldn't wait to learn to use chopsticks immediately, feeling a sense of pride. These were things related to the gods. "Priest, I want to learn. Teach me quickly." "Me too. Make way, I'll go first." "Me." The people crowded around Su-Yun, some even arguing, each brimming with excitement and determination. Clearly, even if they were told they didn't need to learn, they would secretly teach themselves. Ahem, ahem, the tall, burly chieftain coughed a few times, then strode over. His imposing face swept over the other tribesmen, the oppressive aura causing their voices to soften. Seeing his goal achieved, the chieftain smiled with satisfaction, then turned to Su-Yun. Priest, the chieftain looked at him with a meaningful gaze, somewhat embarrassed. Beside him, Feng and Qing also looked embarrassed. Their intentions obvious. Su-Yun, his lips twitched slightly, speechless as he looked at the tribesmen, including the chieftain, all staring at him with burning eyes, or rather, at what he was holding. He truly hadn't expected his casual remark to have such a good effect. However, since they wanted to learn, he had no reason to refuse. So, under his explanation, the tribesmen nodded frequently, as if they understood, but when they tried to use them, they all scratched their heads, feeling as if their fingers were cramping, no longer their own. They now fully experienced the terrifying difficulty of using chopsticks properly. Su-Yun wasn't too surprised by this. Even Chinese children often embarrass themselves trying to learn how to use chopsticks properly, requiring time and practice. Let alone beginners like them. Just think of those foreigners who use chopsticks like forks, and you'll know how difficult it is to use chopsticks well. Although the tribespeople were somewhat stumped, the thought of their great god filled them with fighting spirit, each wanting to be the first to successfully use chopsticks. We can leave now. Su-Yun looked at the tribespeople diligently practicing with chopsticks and imitating the chopsticks they were making, shook his head, and stood up. After walking to a secluded spot, he withdrew his consciousness, leaving only the nearly worn-out old priest. In the divine stone space, Su-Yun silently studied his new technique, light gathering in his palm. A dozen seconds later, the entire divine stone space changed from a white expanse to complete darkness. The first stage is almost complete. Seeing the last few rays of light in the air being gradually drawn towards him, he suppressed his excitement and calmly maintained the status quo. As the last ray of light was swallowed by the sphere of light, the divine stone space seemed to truly fall into deathly darkness. But he knew it wasn't. Besides the surface light, there were hidden rays of light, emanating from objects at all times, including the human body. Su-Yun frowned slightly, trying to absorb these rays using the same method as before. But unfortunately, he failed. He discovered that even if he absorbed the light now, it would continue to be emitted later, making it pointless. Trouble. How can I solve this problem? Su-Yun was in a bad mood, his mind racing. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't come up with a good solution. Su-Yun frowned and muttered to himself, these rays of light are too stubborn, they can't be eliminated at all, how can I stop them? Wait. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he thought of that last thought. Perhaps I'm going in the wrong direction. Su-Yun's eyes lit up. Compared to the slim chance of absorbing all the light, given his status as the god of light, he felt that stopping the light from emitting any more light might be a much better option. Thanks to Stephen for the 588 book coins reward. Thanks to Tihozihaxiu for the 588 book coins reward. Thanks to 20200712175106847 feed for the 100 Kidian coins. Thank you all for your continued support. I'll add an extra chapter today or tomorrow. Chapter 82 Guanine Soil. Thinking this, Su-Yun suddenly closed his eyes, recalling the feeling of controlling light he usually experienced. He mentally commanded the light in this area, stop. The thought had barely formed when a peculiar sense of control arose within him. Opening his eyes, he followed that feeling and began suppressing the hidden light within the divine stone space. As he suppressed it, his divine power surged, rapidly consuming itself. The dim light began to flicker, weakening considerably. It's working. Su-Yun's lips curled slightly, pleased. However, with the suppression of the light, more than 10% of his divine power had already been depleted in a short time. He wasn't alarmed but rather delighted. The more difficult it was, the more it proved his premonition was correct. This technique was definitely extraordinary. Compared to the seemingly hopeless absorption of light, stopping the emission of light, while not entirely successful, proved its feasibility. The weakening light was the best proof. With more practice, he would succeed one day. Having thought this through, he calmed himself and diligently practiced the state of suppressing the light. After practicing for a short time, his divine power was completely depleted. The process yielded decent results. Judging from the initial effect of suppressing the light, the efficiency had increased slightly with the same consumption of divine power. I can only rely on time to slowly wear them down, Su-Yun muttered. Fortunately, he had dealt with the god of frost, so he had plenty of time to spare. Thinking of the god of frost, he suddenly realized that he hadn't dealt with the ice tribe yet. It was a tribe of 2,000 people, and leaving it unattended wasn't a good idea. Although the god of frost had fallen, and the tribe would eventually weaken, keeping it around still posed some problems. Moreover, if those people were brainwashed and absorbed into the tribe, it would greatly enhance his strength. Suyun fell into thought. In a short while, relying on his modern knowledge and experience, several brainwashing methods had already surfaced in his mind. He was confident that after completing one of these processes, everyone except the stubborn and devout would definitely repent and start anew. However, after pondering for a while, he finally decided to leave the ice tribe alone for now. Considering that the tribe couldn't absorb that many people right now, having too many might cause them to turn against him. Furthermore, he planned to let the ice tribe people cool off for a while, waiting until they realized the tribe was without divine protection and plunged into despair before subduing them. He believed their faith would be easier to convert then. Another reason for this decision was that he intended to leave the ice tribe to his own people to deal with first. For the sake of the tribe's development, multiple external enemies would provide motivation, preventing them from succumbing to complacency. Moreover, he could capture them in batches, giving the tribe time to assimilate. After making this decision, Suyun replenished his divine power by opening the small black sphere and then continued practicing his new techniques. Before that, however, he focused his mind on the old priest's faith thread and sent him a command. He directly entrusted the task of finding kaolin, also known as porcelain clay, to the old priest. Hopefully, I can find this kind of clay in another world, Suyun murmured to himself. Speaking of porcelain clay, he couldn't help but think of another familiar name, guanine clay. In the old society and during the 3 years of natural disasters, the poor often survived by eating clay, a type of clay known as guanine clay, during lean years or famines. This clay could fill their stomachs, but it couldn't be digested or absorbed by the human body. Eating it caused bloating and constipation. Small amounts wouldn't be fatal. Although they wouldn't starve, the lack of nutrition would still lead to death. During famines, countless people died from bloating and constipation after eating guanine clay. This is what is meant by being so poor that one had to eat clay. Suyun's thoughts wandered, and he sighed inwardly. Without this kind of clay, the idea of making porcelain might be completely shattered. Ordinary clay cannot be used to make porcelain, only the snow-white, fine clay can produce crystal-clear porcelain. After assigning the task, Suyun continued practicing, striving to master the technique as soon as possible. Time passed, night fell, and the bright moon hung in the sky. A peaceful night passed, and the next morning dawned, with the golden sunlight streaming down. In the Yanheron tribe, some members were still engaged in arduous construction work. As time passed, the construction of wooden houses and the improved appearance of the tribe's people after their baths made the entire tribe seem much more civilized and powerful. Outside the tribe, several groups of tribespeople set off to hunt, but unlike usual, this time they were not only hunting, but also fulfilling a mission recently given by the priest to find porcelain clay. A group of 6 men walked through the trees and grass, the fallen leaves rustling under their feet. "Brother Mao, is there really white clay in the hunting party?" Stone turned to Mao, a tall and strong man with a missing left arm. Upon hearing this, Mao, who was walking in front, subconsciously showed a thoughtful look in his eyes, as if he had suddenly remembered something. "I don't know," he answered first, then hesitated, "but I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. I don't know if I'm mistaken." Kuang, one of the men in the group, looked at him in surprise and walked over to his side. "Spear, you really saw it before. If you have, then think about it. If you really find it, the priest and the leader will definitely give us a big reward." He put his thick arm on Spear's shoulder, his eyes full of excitement. The other 3 also gathered around, their eyes eager. Feeling a bit pressured by everyone's gaze, Spear said somewhat embarrassedly, "Let me think, but I can't guarantee I'm not mistaken." After saying that, he frowned and started thinking hard, while the other 5 people beside him fell silent, waiting with some nervous expressions. More than 10 minutes later, Spear's brows were still deeply furrowed. The memory was really quite old, and he hadn't paid much attention at the time. If it weren't for the white soil itself making a deep impression on him, he might have forgotten it altogether. After thinking for a while, he still couldn't figure it out. Sometimes people are like that, the more they think, the less they can remember. Never mind, Kwong sighed regretfully. Let's go hunting first. That dirty place you found might be hunting grounds. Maybe we'll remember it while we're hunting, he made a joke without thinking. Not even realizing it himself. But as soon as he finished speaking, Mao Hu's eyes lit up slightly. Kwong's words had served as a reminder, and just that reminder triggered his memory. Follow me, he hurriedly ran ahead. Thanks to Night Shop for the 700 book coins reward, thanks to Sheng for the 200 book coins reward, thanks to Yisha for the 100 book coins reward. 3 chapters tomorrow. Please give me all kinds of recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Greek letter Omega. Chapter 83 Mysterious Divinely Gifted Plants. Could it be? The 5 men exchanged glances, their faces lighting up with joy. They quickly followed. 20 minutes later, the 6 arrived at a place. A 10-meter circle pool stood there, its water crystal clear. In front of the pool was a bare, straight rock cliff, seemingly very high. However, none of this attracted their attention. Their gazes were drawn to the surrounding soil. A large patch of fine, white soil stood out prominently near the pool, captivating their eyes. This was high-quality porcelain clay. There really is white soil, so much? They were initially shocked, then overwhelmed with excitement. They had initially thought there was only a little, but seeing such a large area of white soil around the pool, it was impossible for them not to be excited. If we report this place to the priest, we'll definitely receive many benefits, a burly man named Feng said joyfully. Yes, there's no time to lose. Let's go back immediately and tell the priest this good news, Kwong decided. Mao and the others nodded, about to run back to the tribe to relay the message. But before they could act, Shi Tao suddenly stopped them, staring in disbelief at a spot. Look! What's that? He exclaimed, pointing high up on the cliff. Mao and the other 5 looked puzzled, immediately following his finger. At first glance, they were stunned. On the sheer cliff face, several meters high, barely visible, a small tree was stubbornly growing. If that were all, they wouldn't be so amazed. What astonished them was that this small tree, which looked no more than waist high, was adorned with pale green leaves and vibrant red flowers. However, both the green leaves and red flowers were unusual. The green leaves were as translucent as jade, and the red flowers were equally so, their crimson blossoms adding to the tree's mystic and extraordinary quality. This is a divinely bestowed plant, Kwong stammered. Upon hearing this, the other 5's eyes widened. They had all changed, their faces filled with astonishment. They had guessed what this thing was. Before, they might not have recognized it, but after the traveling merchant's visit, they knew exactly what it was. Some divine fruits could be exchanged for the method of building wooden houses in their tribe. This was an entire divine tree, not to mention its unique and extraordinary appearance. Its value must be extremely high. I think we're going to be rich, Stone shouted excitedly. With this, not only will the priest-in-chief reward us, but we might even be praised by the great god. Upon hearing this, the other 5's hearts raced. Just imagining the possibilities Stone spoke of filled them with a sense of glory. They were all flushed with excitement. But it's too high, Kwong stared longingly, wishing he could sprout wings and fly up. The cliff was too steep, there was nowhere for them to land. Retrieving the divine plant was impossible. Shi Tao panicked. What do we do then? We have to go back and call others for help, Kwong said regretfully. Alright, Shi Tao looked disappointed, then impatiently ran back. What are we waiting for? Let's go. The others were taken aback. This kid, Kwong smiled helplessly. However, the 5 of them were also anxious and quickly caught up with Shi Tao. Soon, after the 6 disappeared, the area around the pool returned to normal. Silence. Then, a gust of wind swept across the cliff, causing the small trees to sway and rustle, scattering a few crimson petals. The translucent petals drifted gently down the cliff, landing on the clear water and creating ripples. The crimson petals floated, seemingly about to be blown ashore. But at that very moment, a long, thick, dark shadow suddenly rushed from the bottom of the pool, its gaping maw swallowing the petals and water in the blink of an eye. HMPH, a god. A hint of mockery flashed in the shadow's blood-red eyes, but more so, cruelty. It had originally intended to devour the 6 people who had invaded its territory, until it heard those lower creatures speak of gods. The word too stopped it, replaced by another arrogant idea. If I eat those so-called gods, can I advance again? Its bloodshot eyes were filled with madness and jealousy. Compared to the gods' favored status, like children of the world, These kinds of beasts were illegitimate children, not even biological children, and simply couldn't compare. Whether it was talent, strength, or the difficulty of advancement, there was no comparison. It was jealous. Why did it have to spend so much time and effort to advance, relying on the effects of the mangrove tree, while those gods could easily catch up to it? They even seemed to have endless lifespans and strength that could easily defeat them among their peers. Why? It glanced down at. A scar marked its dark, scaled waist, and a venomous glint flashed in its eyes. This time, I'll show you gods that talent and status are useless against absolute power. You can only tremble in my mouth. It decided that if the god was weaker than itself, it wouldn't hesitate to commit god-slaying. I wonder what the taste of a god is like. A savage grin spread across its gaping maw as it swam ashore, its black body leaving a long trail in its wake. It stealthily followed a group of people. It needed to observe the tribe's situation first to deduce the god's strength and decide whether to devour it. Soon, in their haste, Kwang and the others returned to the tribe in just over 10 minutes, completely unaware that an uninvited guest, destined to bring disaster, was following behind them. Watching the 6 lowly creatures run into the tribe, the black creature's vertical pupils flashed with a mocking smile. At the same time, it also took in the size of the tribe, and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Small in area, it definitely looked like a small tribe. However, just to be on the safe side, it instinctively used its innate talent to briefly probe for life force. A moment later, the caution in its vertical pupils completely vanished, replaced by greed and pleasure. Such a small tribe with so few people, it's definitely a first-level god. With only a half step to level 4 strength, this weak deity will absolutely have no power to resist. It was extremely pleased, feeling that today the damned heavens had opened their eyes and specially gifted it a divine feast. Eat it, and I can break through to level 4, whether it was out of hatred for the deity and the pleasure of revenge, or to increase its strength. This tribe's deity was doomed to die. It was already on its food list. Roar! A huge beastly roar suddenly resounded throughout the Yanhuan tribe. The tribe's people were awe-stunned, looking in horror at a thick and slender monster flying in the air with overwhelming momentum. Divine Stone Space Home Su-Yun stopped what he was doing, frowned, and looked outside. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 84 Beast Attack. A strange python, Su-Yun muttered to himself. He recognized it at a glance. He had only heard of it before. This was the first time he had seen the real thing. However, what did this creature want? Invading his tribe? Did he think he was so easy to bully? Thinking this, his eyes turned cold. He turned and flew out of the divine stone, which shone brightly. He quickly floated to the front of the black python, his eyes icy cold in the air. It was a giant python, over 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket, its black scales gleaming coldly in the sunlight. Roar! You are the god of this tribe? The python roared, looking contemptuously at the glowing god. However, its heart was not as it appeared. Instead, it felt even more jealous. The god's appearance fueled its malice and its desire to devour it intensified. Perfect. After devouring this god, the lower creatures below could be used as snacks. You're unlucky today. Meeting me is your misfortune. The black python's eyes were filled with mockery. Without saying much, it opened its blood-red maw, and a thick black mist gathered inside. A level 3 beast speaking human language, Su-Yun sensed the aura slightly, his brows furrowing slightly, but relaxing after a moment. He was somewhat surprised that the giant python attacked without warning. The black mist attacked with incredible speed. Su-Yun hesitated for a moment but didn't dodge. Instead, he flicked his sleeve, and a highly condensed white light also collided with it. Boom! A loud noise rang out as the two collided, and the resulting shockwave caused a strong wind to rise. Neither of them paid any attention to this. They stared at the colliding black mist and light, both in astonishment. A countermeasure, Su-Yun noticed that when his light struck the black mist, it made a sizzling sound, and then the black mist was purified by the white light and began to dissipate. Unfortunately, although his power was more effective against his opponent, the black python was a whole level stronger, and this attack completely neutralized each other. Impossible, the black python exclaimed in surprise, followed by shock and anger. I'm a half-step level 4 beast, How could I possibly be no match for a level 1? Wait, its blood-red eyes widened slightly, and it cried out in confusion and shock. This aura is that of a level 2 god. In its perception, how could such a small tribe possibly be a level 2 god? And even if it was a level 2 god, with its strength nearing level 4, it shouldn't be able to fight this mere level 2 god to draw. This made it think it was dreaming. Unconvinced, it unleashed 3 more black mist balls in quick succession. Still not reassured, its massive body opened its blood-red maw, and with a gust of foul wind, it lunged at Su-Yun. At this moment, the sheer force was astonishing. The hundreds of tribesmen watching below couldn't help but show expressions of worry. A little girl, about 3 or 4 years old, looked up at the sky with fear and worry. "Mother, will God be alright?" she asked, clutching tightly to a woman beside her. "God will be alright," the woman nodded firmly. Su-Yun frowned. This beast is preparing for close combat. Without thinking too much, he activated the characters within his body. A milky white flame erupted from his hand, then surged, engulfing everything attacking from the front. The black mist, upon contact with the white flame, seemed to have encountered a true nemesis, resisting for only a few seconds before melting away like snow, completely annihilated. The black python was shocked. A burning sensation spread through its body where the flame struck, and its scales became pitted and uneven in a short time. Terrified, it immediately stopped its advance, dispelling the flames and retreating rapidly. Its eyes were filled with fear and shock as it looked at the white flames. This is divine magic, but how can it be so strong? The black python felt this power completely countering it, making it incredibly frustrated, while a murderous intent flashed in its heart. This god must die. If before it was out of vengeance, now it was to eliminate its mortal enemy. Since it had already offended the god, it might as well kill it before it grew too powerful, otherwise it might not have another chance. Moreover, it didn't think it would lose. Although it seemed evenly matched now, with its half-step 4th level strength, it could wear down this damned god by attrition. Roar. "Damn god, don't be so smug." Suddenly, it swooped down. "I can't kill you right now, so I'll use your followers to pay for it." Ha ha ha. It wanted to let this god know the consequences of offending it. "You're courting death." Su-Yun's voice was icy. He had originally wanted to test the difference between the beasts, but this beast had to resort to such underhanded methods, so he was too lazy to hold back any longer. The black python's eyes revealed cruelty and bloodlust, and its saliva dripped. But before it could even taste the crowd below, a cold voice resounded throughout the heavens and earth. "Golden wheel." Golden orbs began to appear around Su-Yun, and in the blink of an eye, 9 golden orbs floated behind him. With a wave of his hand, a golden orb flew towards him at lightning speed. Whoosh boom, a dazzling golden pillar erupted from his hand. The swooping black python was startled, sensing a deadly threat. It abruptly turned its head, its ferocious python head's pupils shrinking as its vertical pupils were completely drawn to the golden light. Terrified, it paused, hastily trying to dodge. Unfortunately, the golden light was too fast. Even with its quick reaction, it couldn't dodge at all in time. Roar. With a scream, the golden pillar pierced through the outer part of its python body. As python blood spurted from the wound, it turned black and stopped bleeding in the next second, emitting a wisp of smoke that faintly emitted an enticing fragrance. "What is this?" It stared in shock and anger at the golden pillar that had pierced through its body. Then, in a flash, it suddenly noticed that the deity had changed significantly. 8 golden orbs floated behind him, giving him an aura of mystery and majesty. Not good. Seeing the deity's hand twitch slightly, and recalling the golden pillar around him, he knew exactly what was about to happen. With a fair grit of his teeth, he twisted his body, spraying blood as he severed the wound from the golden pillar. Thankfully, it only pierced the outer side. Even so, he felt a pervasive sense of danger creeping in, and a quick glance revealed the golden pillar hurtling towards him. Instantly terrified, he fled in panic, his body contorting in mid-air to evade it. Chapter 85. Haha, I dodged it. The golden pillar slashed wildly through the air. 10 seconds later, the black python, covered in wounds and missing a section of its tail, stopped moving, panting heavily. Those few seconds were breathtaking. A slight misstep and it felt it would only end up as a mangled corpse. Catching its breath, its blood-red eyes were filled with malice and arrogance. Haha. I dodged it. Let's see how you. It assumed that the god's attack must be a trump card, something it wouldn't easily use again. However, is that so? Su-Yun nodded indifferently, as if responding to it. The next second, golden wheel, accompanied by these two words that terrified the black python, another of the remaining 8 golden spheres behind Suyun was about to fly out. The black python had a bad feeling. Could it be? It looked at the other 8 golden wheels, a terrifying thought arising in its mind. While incredulous, it also felt a chill run down its spine. No, we have to stop him. Roaring, it exerted all its strength, preparing to deliver a close-up python kiss before Suyun could activate the golden wheel. Oh, Suyun said with a half-smile, then I'll play with you. He also wanted to test its strength in this state. The golden wheel flew towards it as before, but this time it didn't fly towards its hand. Instead, it blocked its path, forming a square barrier. Caught off guard, the black python crashed straight into the barrier. Boom! The golden barrier didn't budge, while the black python almost saw stars and felt dizzy. Not only that, the black scales that touched the golden barrier emitted blue smoke and even began to melt. Sizzle roar! With a scream, the black python instinctively fled backward. Seeing the great god displaying his divine power, the black python had no ability to resist him. God is so powerful, God, the people below cheered excitedly. Suyun's expression was strange as he glanced at the black python. Is this how you dare to provoke me? The still shaken black python, upon hearing this, was immediately filled with rage. It roared venomously, why? I'm not reconciled, how can you, a mere second-level deity, defeat me? Looking at the 7 remaining golden orbs, despair flashed in its bloodshot eyes, followed by disbelief. It was a half-step 4th-level deity. Even if this second-level deity was exceptionally powerful, how could the situation be reversed, making it the weaker party? All of this was incomprehensible to the black python, like a dream. It didn't want to die. Run. In a flash, it suddenly turned, wanting to escape and seek revenge later. Seeing that the test couldn't continue, Suyun didn't force it. He coldly looked at the black python and said calmly, let's end this. As these words fell, the remaining 7 golden orbs behind him all began to move. Whoosh! Boom! Streaks of golden light pierced the sky, and the tribespeople below gasped in amazement, dazzled by the beautiful sight. PFFT PFFT PFFT, the black python stared at the several bloody holes piercing its body, its eyes filled with pain and fear. The shadow of death loomed over it. It didn't want to die, it hadn't taken its revenge, it hadn't. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. It thought of many things, and besides resentment and hatred, it felt mostly regret. It regretted coming to this tribe, provoking this monstrous deity. If only. Before it could continue thinking, the 7 golden wheels sliced it horizontally. PFFT PFFT PFFT. The black python was cut into more than a dozen pieces and fell from the sky, the unwilling light in its eyes dimming. The python beast was dead. The god won. The tribespeople breathed a sigh of relief. Watching the python's corpse fall into the air, Suyun's face was thoughtful. This was the first time he had seen a strange beast, but the information about this black python had given him a much better understanding of strange beasts. This black python isn't weak either, a level 3 beast is quite powerful. However, compared to the god's innate advantages, beasts are similar to believers, their strength is inherently a level weaker, Suyun thought to himself. The extraordinary power it wielded couldn't compare to that of a god. If it was about using or borrowing extraordinary power, then a god was wielding the authority of that power, they were simply not on the same level. This was partly why believers and beasts were inherently a level weaker than gods. In his opinion, this beast was probably on par with the god of ice. The reason it lost so miserably was simply bad luck. Not only was its power countered, but it also had to come at the worst possible time, after the Golden Wheel character had been transformed. In the end, it not only failed to steal the chicken but also lost its rice, becoming a tool for testing its moves, and even losing its life here. It was truly pitiful and lamentable. Bang bang, the python's corpse fell, kicking up a cloud of dust. What should we do with this python meat? Suyun's expression was somewhat strange. I wonder if eating this beast's flesh will strengthen my physique, he thought. Since the beast was dead, he might as well make use of it and offer the meat to his people as compensation for their emotional distress. But we should still be careful. Suyun then relayed the message to the old priest, instructing him to collect the python meat and test it on animals. If it was safe to eat, they could try feeding it to the people, perhaps it would bring some benefits. As for himself, he naturally declined. After thinking this through, he turned and floated back to the divine stone space. The people began enthusiastically moving the python carcass, each marveling at the extraordinary giant python. However, Stone, standing in the crowd, showed no joy, his expression somewhat melancholy. "Brother Kwong, I have a feeling we've gotten ourselves into trouble." Kwong's face stiffened, realizing the direction the giant python had come from, and how coincidental it all seemed. Suddenly, Mao hesitated, then said, "I heard from those traveling merchants that there are usually strange beasts guarding the areas near the divinely bestowed plants. Could it be?" The joyful smiles on everyone's faces vanished, replaced by guilt. If it weren't for the intervention of the great god, their tribe would have suffered heavy losses, perhaps even been wiped out. Sigh, let's tell the priest about this first, Kwong sighed helplessly. The other 5 nodded quickly. They had no intention of hiding it, their faith in the god prevented them from doing such a thing. Soon, the group of 6 found the old priest and began to recount the whole story. As the old priest listened, his expression grew increasingly bewildered. "It's only been given the order, and it's already happened. The divinely bestowed plants are so lucky," he exclaimed. "Thanks to Zontao for the 300 Kidian coins reward. Thank you to Yusha for the 100 book coins reward." Chapter 86. The divinely gifted plant arrives. Seeing that the 6 men showed no joy but rather some dejection, he was puzzled and asked curiously, "What's wrong, priest?" "It's like this, that strange beast might be," he sighed and slowly explained. "We should have thought of that sooner. How could a divinely bestowed plant not be guarded by a strange beast?" The old priest's brows furrowed deeper as he listened, but eventually, thinking of the benefits they had brought and their honesty, his brows relaxed. "Don't blame yourselves, you didn't do it on purpose," he comforted them. "You completed your mission this time, and your contribution is great." The old priest was experienced and quickly pulled the 6 men out of their dejection. "Later, you will lead your people to that place and bring the things back to the tribe." After saying this, he dismissed the 6 men. After they left, the old priest hesitated. "I wonder if the great god will blame them." A while later, he went to the altar of the sacred stone, knelt down and prayed, slowly recounting the whole story, and then fell into anxious waiting. Listening to the old priest's words, Su Yun was secretly surprised by his good fortune. The task had been completed in such a short time. As for the old priest's worry that he would be blamed, he was overthinking it. Opportunity often comes with danger, and the tribesmen hadn't done it intentionally. Even if the merits and demerits balanced out, in his view, the merits outweighed this small matter. He wasn't that petty. Yes, anything that couldn't defeat him was a minor matter. To avoid discouraging the tribesmen, he said to the old priest, "Bring back the porcelain clay and the divinely bestowed plant as soon as possible. As for those 6 people, you decide on their rewards." With that, the divine voice faded away. The old priest was startled for a moment, then overjoyed. Thank God, he prayed for a while longer before quickly gathering the tribesmen. In no time, a group of 50-odd people gathered at the tribe's gate. Hearing that they were going to retrieve the porcelain clay and the divinely bestowed plant, every tribesman's face lit up with excitement. At the chief's command, the 50-odd people headed towards their destination, the divine stone space. Watching his people walk away, Su Yun couldn't help but feel curious. I wonder what the function of that divinely bestowed plant is. 20 minutes later, the 50-odd people were filled with amazement, intently observing the large expanse of white land. Finally, they all turned towards the cliff. Sure enough, a small tree, its emerald and crimson hues echoing each other, hung on the cliff face, clearly no ordinary tree. Unfortunately, its height of over 10 meters was daunting, making it impossible to obtain. Let's take the clay back first, the chieftain decided, abandoning the divinely bestowed plant for now. Yes, hearing this, the tribespeople began digging for clay, filling pottery jars and carrying them back one by one. As time passed, the clay accumulated in the tribe, eventually forming a small mountain over a meter high. Su Yun, through the believers, had clearly seen the appearance and location of the divinely bestowed plant, realizing that obtaining it would be extremely difficult for the believers alone. With no other option, they had to continue their efforts. Looks like we need to train the believers' abilities. Su Yun shook his head, feeling that besides himself, there was basically no one else in the tribe who could handle things. He couldn't possibly do everything himself. His thoughts shifted, and he focused his attention on the old priest, then followed the returning group to the cliff face. With a light step, he leaped onto the sheer cliff as if using a martial arts technique, then quickly climbed upwards. He was only doing this to avoid making the effect too exaggerated, otherwise, he could have flown up there. The tribespeople below gasped in surprise. "We're here," Su-Yun paused, grabbing the nearby rock face and hovering on the cliff edge. Looking at the divinely bestowed plant, he couldn't help but be amazed by its appearance. He grabbed the small trunk and gently pulled. With a crackling sound, the roots detached from the cliff, and after considerable effort, he managed to pull the small tree, about a meter tall, down without damaging the roots too much. With a flick of his toes, he landed lightly on the ground like a leaf. "Priest is amazing," Stone's eyes lit up, and he rushed over, fawning. "Is this the divinely bestowed plant? It looks so beautiful," he said, his eyes gleaming with longing as he looked at the crimson flowers, swallowing hard. "I've heard that divinely bestowed plants have many effects. Priest, can I have a little bit?" he chuckled. Key, who happened to be there, couldn't help but remark, "Stone, you're shameless." "Exactly. This is definitely meant to be offered to the gods." "You're really daring," the middle-aged man, Feng, also teased. "Maybe the priest will agree?" HMPH, Stone knew the chances of the priest giving him a taste were slim. After all, it was a divine offering. But even so, he couldn't back down. He glanced at them contemptuously. "Stone, you really are." The two were about to make a sarcastic remark when a sentence came from below, making their faces freeze. "You can." Su-Yu nodded slightly. He needed a lab mouse to test the plant's effects, and someone volunteering would be ideal. Since the beast guarded it, it meant it was edible, and he wasn't worried about Stone getting killed after eating it. Even if Stone was dying, he could revive him on the spot with his healing magic. He couldn't let a free lab mouse go to waste. With that, he quickly plucked a flower from the dozens of crimson blossoms on the tree and offered it to Stone. Stone, his expression froze. Honestly, he had only meant it as a joke, a habitual request. He hadn't expected the priest to actually give him a divinely bestowed plant, something he hadn't considered a lab mouse at all. He eagerly accepted the camellia-like flower. The other two were green with envy, practically bursting with jealousy. The other tribesmen, seeing this, were equally envious and jealous. Stone, under the watchful eyes of so many, became smug. This is what they call the squeaky wheel gets the grease. With that, he plucked a translucent crimson petal from among dozens of petals and popped it into his mouth without a word. Tisk tisk tisk, he deliberately made chewing noises as he opened and closed his mouth. His irritating behavior made Feng, Qi, and the others grit their teeth in annoyance. "Stone, you're dead." At that moment, more than one person had a similar thought. Stone, who was eating the flower, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, leaving him somewhat bewildered. "The divine plant is working," Stone muttered happily. He thought it was the divine plant that was working. Chapter 87 Crimson Flower Special Effects. Stone had barely finished eating the flower petal under the envious gazes of the crowd when he suddenly sensed something. His mind cleared instantly, as if a sudden enlightenment had opened his eyes. Problems he couldn't understand before suddenly became clear. He felt he had become smarter. Just as joy appeared on Stone's face, a wet sensation washed over him. He realized something was wrong with his nose. He reached down and touched it. Blood, blood, blood. A piercing scream rang out. Everyone else stared in stunned silence at Stone's sudden nosebleed, until the scream snapped them back to reality. "Blood, what happened to Stone? Stone is going to die?" A chorus of terrified voices filled the air, making Stone's expression even more horrified. "Help!" Stone looked at the priest with pleading eyes, his expression panicked. Su-Yun frowned slightly, giving Stone a curious look. A few seconds later, his expression turned strange. "Are you sure your body is okay? You look perfectly normal." To him, aside from the slight bleeding, Stone seemed perfectly fine, and he could still shout for so long, so the situation didn't seem serious. Even if something serious had happened, he could use his healing spell immediately. Stone stopped panicking and subconsciously checked his body. Indeed, there was no other discomfort. He seemed perfectly normal. Really nothing wrong, but how could that be? If he was normal, why was he bleeding? Leaning on his brain, which was a bit smarter than usual, he thought in confusion. But before he could figure anything out, his mind suddenly went blank, and he felt drowsy, his thoughts seemingly frozen. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that he was alright, then became gloating. "Tisk tisk, serves you right for being greedy. Now you're in trouble." "Yeah, haha." Feng and the others burst into laughter, teasing him, feeling a bit of their anger dissipate. feeling quite refreshed. How do you feel? Su-yoon looked thoughtfully at his drowsy appearance, seeing that there really wasn't anything seriously wrong. Upon hearing this, the others were filled with curiosity, wondering why he had suddenly started bleeding. Stone shook his head, fighting off the urge to fall asleep to stay awake. Hearing the priest's question, he pondered for a moment. I feel like I've become smarter. As soon as he finished speaking, the other tribesmen stopped laughing, looking at him incredulously. Even Su-yoon's eyes showed surprise. If the fruits brought by the 5 traveling merchants had left a normal impression, the effects of the divine plant Stone had eaten were somewhat beyond their imagination. Stone continued, I feel like things I couldn't understand before became very easy to understand. This must be because I've become smarter, he said with absolute certainty. Boom. Upon confirmation, dozens of tribesmen were shocked. There was something that could make someone smarter? Su-yoon didn't rejoice too soon, suddenly asking, Are you feeling unwell? Hearing this, everyone immediately thought of the nosebleed they had experienced earlier. I was only smart for a short while, then I felt like I hadn't woken up properly, Stone said, distressed. Besides feeling sleepy, the feeling of becoming smart disappeared, and my brain isn't very sharp. It seems there's a time limit in minor side effects, Su-yoon pondered to himself. Judging from the fact that the black python was unharmed until now, there shouldn't be any major side effects. The slight side effects now showing are practically non-existent. The tree's effect is truly astonishing, feeling far superior to what those traveling merchants offered. And indeed, if those 5 traveling merchants knew, they would be surprised and envious. This type of fruit is among the most precious. Even their Vulcan tribe's rare divine given plants are only for their own consumption and never for sale. They were incredibly lucky to have encountered such a rare divine given plant so easily. I wonder if this flower will work on me. If it does, then my speed in mastering techniques will definitely increase significantly. Su-yoon suddenly thought of this, a slight smile playing on his lips. His current speed of mastering techniques was incredibly slow. With this thing, his efficiency might increase dramatically. Eager to act, he quickly took the sapling back to the tribe and left the old priest's body. He didn't take the sapling directly, but waited for the tribe's people to offer it to him voluntarily. As he expected, the old priest, after regaining his senses, held a ritual, offering the divine plant as a sacrifice to him, which he accepted without hesitation. The divine stone emitted a burst of light, and amidst the tribe's people's exclamations, pulled the divine plant into the divine stone space. Looking at the sapling back in his hand, Su-yoon, suppressing his desire to experiment, first gave the priest an order, make porcelain with porcelain clay. It's similar to making pottery, just with different materials. Based on the tribe's people's current experience, they can definitely make it. After giving the order, Su-yoon gently plucked a crystal-clear crimson flower from the divine plant. He broke off a petal and put it in his mouth. It tastes a bit sweet, somewhat like an apple. After muttering to himself, he began to sense the changes in his divine body. Not long after, he felt his mind clear slightly, like someone who is very sleepy suddenly becoming alert after watching a horror movie. No, the effect isn't as expected. Su-yoon didn't feel the same kind of increased intelligence as the stone. His mind was just slightly clearer. He didn't know if it was due to the divine power or his extraordinary strength, but the effect was much weaker. Not enough? Then I'll increase the dosage. Thinking this, he swallowed the entire crimson flower in one gulp. It felt like eating a large bite of an apple. Su-yoon was startled, his expression momentarily dazed. In that instant, he felt his thinking speed up considerably. Scientifically speaking, his IQ increased. Metaphysically speaking, his comprehension improved. Many of the minor difficulties of the new moves were suddenly clarified. Not wanting to miss the opportunity to use them, Su-yoon quickly unleashed the new moves. The entire divine stone space dimmed slightly, and light converged on his hand at an extremely fast speed. 4 or 5 seconds later, darkness enveloped the divine stone space. The light absorption speed has increased dramatically. Su-yoon secretly calculated, what usually took over 10 seconds had been reduced by more than half. Now for the main event, Su-yoon took a deep breath. He began to extinguish the hidden light. Thanks to Tohozi Haxiu for the 588 book coins. Thanks to Taishai Anzin for the 100 book coins. Thank you Tohozi Haxiu shampoo enthusiast for your continued support. Thank you. It's just a little regrettable that I use Pantene. Chapter 88 Porcelain. With just a slight attempt, he discovered that the suppression of the light was much deeper than before. If the light was at full strength initially, now it was only half full after suppression, and he would achieve his goal soon. During the suppression process, he also noticed that the progress had accelerated significantly. At this rate, if he could maintain this state, he estimated that he could master the technique in just a few days. After thinking this, he immersed himself in practicing the technique again. 5 minutes later, he suddenly broke free from that state, his mind slightly heavy, but he recovered in an instant. Side effects, however, the nosebleeds and drowsiness that Shi Tao experienced did not occur to him. That meant that there were no side effects for him, and if he could continue using it. However, Su Yun looked at the remaining dozens of flowers and was a little troubled. Forget it, let's try to see if it can become my exclusive plant first. The traveling merchants had suggested it, so it was a good opportunity to test the effect. After thinking this, he gently touched the small tree with his fair fingers, and his divine power surged, flowing into the small tree. The moment the divine power touched the sapling, it trembled slightly, a sense of repulsion washing over it. However, this resistance didn't last long, quickly dissipating under the divine power's influence. The divine power surged into the sapling's body, immediately sensing the foreign energy and aggressively beginning its invasion, forcefully absorbing the original energy in the process. The divine power underwent a slight change. After about 10 minutes, the entire tree, from leaves to roots, was completely dominated by the divine power. The tree trembled, its size increasing. Branches sprouted, becoming even more lush and leafy, and even producing a dozen or so additional flowers. The originally crimson blossoms became even more translucent and vibrant, their petals shimmering with a faint crimson glow. At the same time, Su Yun felt a connection to the tree, as if he could destroy it at any moment. After a moment's thought, he understood why. The divine power was all within the tree, impossible to ignore. Let's give it a name, the Tree of Wisdom, Su Yun thought, but then his thoughts took a sudden turn. Wisdom fruit on the wisdom tree, you and me under the wisdom tree. Comical fruit on the comical tree, you and me under the comical tree. A chill ran down Su Yun's spine, and he quickly rejected the name. After thinking for a while, he decided, let's call it the Enlightenment Tree. Having decided on a name, he looked at the ground of the divine stone space. During the recent anomaly, the sapling's roots had been trying to spread outwards, but unfortunately, the space's floor was not suitable for it. With a flick of his sleeve, white light emerged from the divine stone space, enveloping the soil near the altar. In the blink of an eye, a hole 2 or 3 meters in diameter appeared, startling the tribespeople outside. The soil was moved around the sapling, and as soon as it touched the ground, the sapling's roots slowly spread and took hold. I wonder if it will die without sunlight, Su Yun thought, deciding to leave it for now and move it out if anything unusual happened. However, he figured it wouldn't die so easily. He carefully sensed the overall energy of this divinely bestowed plant. Equivalent to the energy of a level 2 believer, he pondered for a moment. No wonder this divinely bestowed plant worked on him, even a single piece caused a nosebleed. Those traveling merchants said it could be fed with divine power. I wonder if it will help me advance in rank. Thinking this, he picked another flower. As soon as he ate it, he was surprised to find that the effect was more than 30% better this time. He also discovered that the time delay had been extended by about 10 minutes. This truly made him happy. While he was practicing his new moves, time passed quickly outside, and it soon became evening. The porcelain that the tribespeople had made that morning was now ready to be fired. I heard that the pottery, porcelain made this time is the same kind that the traveling merchants took away not long ago. I've seen it. That stuff is snow-white and very beautiful. With nothing to do as it got dark, almost all the tribespeople had gathered here. They stared at the kiln, which had been extinguished for a while, and excitedly discussed it. Everyone had high expectations for the porcelain that was about to be fired. However, some people were worried and pessimistic. I've heard that porcelain is related to the gods, and that we mortals can really make it. Hearing this, they all hesitated. Yes, such beautiful porcelain, which could be traded with traveling merchants, was it really that easy to make? Everyone felt a little unsure. The old priest, standing in front of the kiln, naturally saw the expressions of his people. Because he was possessed and unconscious, he had never seen the actual objects, so he didn't understand their thoughts. Pottery and porcelain, is the difference really that big? With a strange thought, he quickly ordered a few people to go forward and take the porcelain out of the kiln. Soon, As the people carried the porcelain out of the kiln, they stared at the dusty porcelain in surprise. Although there was a lot of dust on the porcelain, they could still vaguely see its true color through the dust. It's a success. One of the people couldn't resist getting some water and pouring it onto the porcelain bowl. As the dust was washed away by the water, the pristine white porcelain was revealed. The tribespeople stared wide-eyed, exclaiming repeatedly, "So beautiful, God, so this is porcelain," the old priest suddenly realized, looking at the snow-white bowl with delight. White. Pure white, without a trace of impurity. At first glance, it astonished the tribespeople, who hadn't seen many fine things. However, doubts arose in their hearts once again, but this time their doubts were about whether they could really make it. Are we really that amazing? Unbelievable? After a moment of shock, they all realized something simultaneously. No, it should be said that the gods are amazing. That's right, truly worthy of being called gods. Only something so pure white can be worthy of the gods. If it weren't for the methods given by the gods, they could never have turned ordinary clay into something so beautiful. Everyone, including the chief priest, praised it in their hearts. Suyun, who was secretly watching from the shadows, couldn't help but smile. To be honest, he was still somewhat surprised that they had actually made pure white porcelain. He had thought it would have impurities. It seems to be a problem with the soil. The white porcelain clay was clearly extremely pure. To him, the porcelain made by the tribe, aside from some minor flaws in shape, was even more beautiful in color than modern porcelain. With the tribesmen continuously making porcelain, it won't be long before everyone can use it. A strange smile appeared on Suyun's face as he muttered, "I wonder if those traveling merchants, when they come and see everyone in the tribe with a piece of porcelain, will be so angry they'll break their own pores." Sigh. I really didn't mean to cheat them. He felt a pang of conscience. Perhaps we should have the tribesmen hide it as much as possible, so as not to hurt them, leaving them with a last glimmer of hope. At least let them think that porcelain is still a rare treasure, and maybe they can still trade for some things. That way, it's good for everyone. I'm such a good god. Suyun couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 89, A Terrifying New Move. And so, while the clansmen crafted porcelain, Suyun silently honed his skills. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. At noon that day, within the divine stone space, Suyun's expression was grave. The technique had reached its final stage. Suyun glanced at the few remaining enlightenment flowers, a hint of regret flashing across his face, but he still decisively plucked another. As the crimson flower was swallowed, his wisdom and comprehension amplified, and he quickly began the final stage of practice. He stretched out his palm, and light began to converge, the entire process incredibly fast, taking only 2 or 3 seconds, much faster than before. A silent darkness enveloped the divine stone space, devoid of any light, like being in a dark universe, giving a sense of loneliness and desolation. "Stop," a calm voice rang out. In an instant, in an environment invisible to most, the light, like scattered stars, began to fade away. 10 seconds later, a strange feeling permeated the divine stone space. Deathly silence, icy cold. If there had been any hidden light before, it had all vanished now, plunging the space into deathly stillness. The entire divine stone space was devoid of any light. At that moment, Suyun, holding the ball of light, had a peculiar feeling. He glanced down at the ball of light in his hand and muttered to himself, "I have a feeling that if I release it, there will be bad consequences." This feeling was incredibly strong, so strong that it made his heart pound. Decisively, he abandoned the idea of experimenting in the divine stone space. Otherwise, if something really happened, it would be too late to regret it. Suyun stepped out of the divine stone space and into the outside world. The divine stone in the center of the tribe suddenly shone brightly, immediately attracting the attention of a large group of tribespeople. "Ah, a god has descended," they exclaimed. Suyun ignored the tribespeople's astonished expressions and drifted towards the forest outside the tribe. Seeing this, the tribespeople stopped what they were doing, their faces showing worry. After one tribesperson took the lead and followed, hundreds of people followed in unison. What could possibly cause the great god to leave the tribe with such worry? The enemies quickly caught up with the god, who hadn't gone too far. 100 meters from the tribe, Suyun stopped his floating body. "This will do." Just as he thought this, he noticed his tribesmen approaching from a distance, but seeing they weren't getting any closer, he didn't stop them. "Night," a faint voice rang out. In the blink of an eye, Light from a radius of over 100 meters rapidly converged, strands of light wrapping around him, adding even more dazzling brightness to his radiance. This time, he didn't choose to become a sphere. A quick thought allowed him to gather the light onto his body, which worked successfully. However, after 2 or 3 seconds, Su-Yun noticed a problem. He discovered that the light above his head was still continuously converging, impossible to absorb completely. His brow furrowed slightly, and an idea immediately struck him. Stop, instantly. All the light that had been shooting towards this area actively avoided it. This wasn't unexpected. If he could even suppress his own hidden light, then these ordinary rays of light would be even easier to suppress. Without the obstructing light, 2 seconds later, an area of over 100 meters turned completely black. A moment later, the hidden light vanished too. Black, utterly empty, a blackness where nothing could be seen. The area of over 100 meters seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Nothing could be seen. It was somewhat like the effect of a modern invention, the blackest eye that could turn a 3D world into a 2-dimensional plane, or even more like a black hole. This vast area fell into utter stillness. Terrifying. Such an area instinctively instilled panic and trembling in humans who relied on light. What happened, God? Not far from this area, hundreds of tribesmen, their faces filled with terror, retreated a great distance in fear. If they hadn't seen their God floating in the darkness, bringing a glimmer of light and life to the deathly darkness, they might have been too weak to move. Then, their great God continued to speak indifferently. Dawn. They didn't understand what was happening and were puzzled by the meaning of those 2 words. But the next second, they understood. In an instant, endless white light emanated from the god's body. The leader, priest, and others in the crowd all stared wide-eyed. Su-Yun gazed around, his expression growing serious. He concentrated. Everything around him seemed to slow down, allowing him to observe everything carefully. As the light shone, everything in the darkness underwent a devastating transformation. Tiny specks of dust in the air vanished as the light swept across them. No. Rather than vanishing, it was annihilated. In that instant, he clearly saw the dust scatter and disintegrate, disappearing completely. If the dust had only surprised him somewhat, he thought it was normal. Then when the light shone on the soil and the tall trees, his expression froze. As soon as the light touched the trees, the anomaly began. Wisps of dust-like substances gradually emanated from the trees. As the light blew, every tree, every inch of soil, and even some insects and creatures scattered into dust, which then dissipated, leaving nothing behind. Like Thanos snapping his fingers, everything vanished. It was as if an eraser had wiped away everything belonging to the world with the light. This scene truly stunned Su-Yun. Wherever the darkness shrouded, wherever the light shone, only a vast, empty space remained, a truly horrifying sight. As the light faded, the tribespeople who could see clearly stared at the scattered dust, completely bewildered, their minds blank. It took them a while to recover. The hundreds of meters of empty space left them weak and trembling. God is angry, forgive us, God. At this moment, they all knelt on the ground, their faces filled with repentance and pleading for forgiveness. This terrifying scene would terrify even modern people. It was truly too much for their hearts to bear. Hearing his tribesmen's voices, Su-Yun snapped out of his daze and turned to look at them, who were trembling with fear and seemed to have been thoroughly toyed with. A smile flickered in his eyes. With a thought, he flew back towards the divine stone space, sending a message to the old priest along the way. The gist of it was that he was merely experimenting and had nothing to do with anger. He should calm his tribesmen down. The old priest, kneeling on the ground, listened to the words, his expression shifting rapidly before finally settling into horror. Great God! This was just an experiment by God! He exclaimed instinctively. The tribesmen, who had initially breathed a slight sigh of relief, then fell into a similar state of shock as the old priest. Chapter 90, Back to Modern Times, Online Trends. This was just a small experiment by God. My God, I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. This was actually caused unintentionally by God. What if God got serious? Everyone gasped. They wondered, could the entire forest have been leveled? Driven by their thoughts spiraled out of control. A perfectly normal sentence was twisted and misinterpreted, leaving them utterly shocked. This was self-inflicted fear. The power of rumors was undeniable. Su-Yun had no idea that his unintentional remark had been distorted to such an extent, amplifying his power considerably. If he knew, he'd probably be both amused and exasperated. Right now, He was deep in thought within the divine stone space. He was recalling the feeling of unleashing that technique. He felt that after losing all light, things reached a critical point, and that radiance was the final straw. In the instant light and darkness converged, the structure of things was directly destroyed, generating a massive destructive energy, which seemed to be the cause of the collapse. Recalling the power of the technique he had just unleashed, it was truly terrifying, possessing a sense of déjà vu, like a forbidden technique. He knew the consequences of using this move against living beings. Just thinking about those tiny insects, he could guess the outcome. Moreover, the destructive power was too great. It was manageable now, but if he advanced later, the destructive force would be immense. I can only use it as a last resort. Hopefully, no one can force me to use it. Su-Yun shook his head, muttering to himself. Furthermore, this move consumed a lot of energy. He had just used it at full power, almost draining all his divine power, only managing to increase the range to about 100 meters. It couldn't be used regularly. I should come up with a name first. Such a powerful move deserved a good name. Su-Yun frowned slightly, pondered for a moment, and thought, let's call it the Polar Day technique. After deciding on a name, he couldn't help but think about the casting time. Too slow. By the time I cast it, I'll have been attacked several times. In his opinion, while the move was powerful, the casting time of over 10 seconds was a major drawback. I can only continue training and make up for it when I reach the required level and advance to a character level. After a long while, this was the only simple and quick solution he could come up with. He figured that once he actually turned it into characters, his strength would definitely increase significantly. Although he hadn't tried it, given the power of this move, he estimated that even if the Black Python had recently advanced to level 4, he might still be able to defeat it. The destructive power of this move was so impressive that it was hard not to think about it. However, all of this would take time. He had practiced for so long, and even if he wasn't mentally exhausted, he was feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Forget it, I'll just go back to the modern world. Anyway, the tribe is still developing, and there's nothing important. He hadn't been back to the real world for a long time, so this was a good opportunity to relax. Compared to the dangers of the other world, the modern world felt much safer. The black vortex gradually spread, and the divine body disappeared without a trace from the divine stone space. The rosy evening sun shone brightly, and sunlight streamed through the curtains, adding a touch of brightness to the dim room. Su-Yun opened his eyes, glanced at the outside world, and then checked his phone. It was already 5 o'clock in the evening. Due to the time difference, so many days had passed in the other world, but only a few hours had passed in reality. He stood up and stretched. His body, which hadn't moved in a long time, felt no discomfort. He walked to the glass partition, pulled open the door and curtains, and sunlight and fresh air rushed in. A familiar feeling. Su-Yun smiled slightly. Let's see how much impact this morning had. Sitting in a chair in the room, he took out his phone and searched. Keywords like Wudang Mountain, Sword Immortal, etc. A flood of information appeared immediately, even videos. Curious, he clicked on one. The video started playing. So it's a video of me playing a Sword Immortal. Looks like it wasn't blocked. Su-Yun's expression was strange. But thinking about it, it made sense. With 200,000 or 300,000 people watching and watching live, blocking it would be incredibly difficult. Even the government would struggle. And this wasn't just any video, it was about immortals and gods, with a huge impact. Even if it was banned domestically, it wouldn't stop it abroad. The information would continue to circulate, making it a completely thankless task. Even if you could control the internet and people's mouths, could you really control an immortal's reappearance? Once he appears, all those so-called experts' denials will fall apart on their own, making it a thankless and futile effort. At this moment, a dense barrage of comments popped up, and with Su-Yun's exceptional dynamic vision, he easily saw what they all said. Haha, number one, I want to cultivate immortality, with boundless magical power. I want to become an immortal, and happily ascend to the Western paradise. Brothers, I feel that I have now reached the early stage of entering a state of tranquility, and I can already begin to eliminate distracting thoughts. Are there any fellow practitioners? Yes, I think that after cultivating for a while, I should be able to sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will enter my body. Me too, so many fellow practitioners. Ha ha ha, these were guys who saw the immortal and believed it. thinking that the spiritual energy had been revived, and were now diligently cultivating it home. Hey, you guys upstairs, 666. Looks like you're about to advance to the nascent soul stage. Be careful, a wicked doctor might come knocking and drag you to a mental hospital, causing you to lose 1,000 years of cultivation in one fell swoop. Ha ha ha, that's right, those people are really delusional. To me, this video is fake. How could there be such unscientific stuff? I agree with the comment above. Let's defeat these demons and monsters together. This video looks like it was taken from a movie. The special effects are amazing, finally not cheap stuff anymore, changed their ways. These are the skeptics. If you don't understand, don't talk nonsense. I saw the immortal with my own eyes, even watching it live. How could it be fake? Exactly, my illness was cured by the immortal. You internet scum who slander immortals, I'll be the first to not let you get away with it. That's right, some people who had seen the immortal live or in person started to refute him. Under the long-term influence of materialism, netizens' attitudes were polarized, and the barrage was almost a battlefield, with everyone spewing profanities at each other. Of course, besides these people, there were also some who didn't care about the truth, purely believing that good looks were justice. I have to say, the immortal's looks and temperament are truly otherworldly. I feel like I've been turned gay. What should I do? You're not the first, crying, hey guys upstairs, get lost. The immortal brother likes us pretty girls, I want to have his babies. A few more have fallen for it, and after examination, they're beyond saving. Take them away. Next one, seeing someone slander the immortal, these people also join the ranks of those spewing profanities. And you know what? Although these people are obsessed with looks, their fighting power is really strong. Some die-hard fans even went so far as to dox the trolls in a fit of rage. For a moment, the trolls were in a bad situation, almost being driven to despair by the barrage of insults. Thanks to Yisha for the 500 book coins reward. Hearing that Yisha gave me all the pocket money as a reward made me feel a little ashamed. Thanks to Tehu Azixiu for the 588 book coins reward. Thanks to Zhexian Bankuang Deo Sanlang for the 588 book coins reward. And thank you to the other two big shots too. I was originally going to update 3 times today, but I'm a little short on time, so the next update will be delayed for a few hours. I broke my promise, I'm ashamed. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 91, Kunlun Mountains, Valley of Death. After reviewing the comments, Su Yun let out a soft sigh. Some believed it, some doubted it. That was perfectly normal in his opinion. After all, many people considered it a fake video, which defied common sense. It wasn't surprising. It seems the higher-ups are neither supporting nor paying attention, otherwise, this situation wouldn't have occurred. Even after the video appeared, some people still don't believe it. Clearly, no explanation has been given regarding its authenticity. Su Yun shook his head. This outcome was relatively good for him. After watching the video, he returned to check other content. After a while, he found that most of it was similar, lacking any originality. Just as he was about to close the browser, he discovered a special piece of information. Kunlun Mountain, Death Valley, Su Yun murmured. He had searched for terms like immortal, so how did this information appear? Curious, he clicked on it. He was astonished by the information revealed within. A dozen days ago, someone discovered an underground palace, suspected to be the abode of immortals, in Death Valley of the Kunlun Mountains. Really? Su Yun was filled with astonishment and doubt. Death Valley was no easy place to enter or leave. One wrong move could cost you your life. This was Death Valley, known as the Gates of Hell, and the fact that someone could emerge from it was truly astonishing. But then he thought, the world is full of adventurers and reckless individuals. There are plenty of people who enjoy extreme sports and thrills. If someone went in seeking excitement and was lucky enough to come out, it wouldn't be so surprising. After figuring it out, Su Yun felt relieved, but after reading the content, he couldn't help but feel speechless. Your immortal lives in an underground palace, could it be some kind of tomb? But that doesn't make sense. The magnetic field there is very chaotic. The feng shui there can't be good either. Did someone really build a tomb there? However, these were all just his guesses. He was only vaguely familiar with feng shui, So he couldn't figure it out. Perhaps there was some kind of reversal of fortune. After all, it was Kunlun Mountain, so maybe he could get some of the ancestral dragon energy. Of course, it might not be a tomb at all. To know what it was, he would have to go and see for himself. I'm not that free to go. Su-Yun was about to dismiss the idea when he saw something at the very bottom of the content. The archaeological team will risk entering the valley to investigate the palace that appeared there. This is nothing compared to the fact that, for the sake of popularity and safety, the archaeological team will use the latest anti-jamming satellite military equipment to conduct a live broadcast. With this announcement, it's easy to imagine how many people will flock to watch out of curiosity. Going there isn't necessarily a bad idea, Su-Yun murmured, a slight smile playing on his lips. As a deity desperately needing faith, what could please a god more than this opportunity? Speaking of which, that place is rather strange. I'll gain both strength and curiosity, why wouldn't I go? He made this decision in his mind. He completely ignored the dangers of Death Valley. With his current strength, he was confident he could go in and have some fun. He hoped for an unexpected turn of events, which would bring him some novelty. This was the confidence that strength brought. Otherwise, like those mortals in the archaeological team, he would have stayed as far away from that dangerous place as possible. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a trip, but rather courting death. After thinking it over, Su-Yun carefully checked the departure time. 5 days later was only the first time, and he was somewhat disappointed. The time was indeed a bit long. Just as he was feeling disappointed, another message from the ground caught his eye, instantly changing his expression of disappointment. The live stream has been changed. It will start at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Su-Yun was slightly surprised and quickly checked the information to see what was going on. Why was it suddenly moved up? There was nothing lacking online, except for a lot of enthusiastic netizens. According to an insider, the reason for moving it up is said that the higher-ups were spurred by the emergence of an immortal. This palace happened to have previously taken over the title of an immortal's palace, and a project that wasn't previously valued suddenly gained attention. Just in case, if it really is an immortal's palace, and we arrive late, some unscrupulous individuals might take the risk, and all the benefits would go to those scoundrels. So, these words clearly explained why the higher-ups changed the time, for one reason only, urgency. Other netizens also chimed in with their own answers. No wonder, anything even remotely related to immortals is skyrocketing in value. If it weren't for Death Valley, I might have already emptied the immortal palace. Hey, you're thinking dangerously. I suggest you recite the 24-character mantra for prosperity to soothe your twisted mind. Cap the internet is a lawless place. I suggest you turn yourself in. Su-Yun's lips twitched slightly as he sighed. These netizens are still as ridiculous as ever. There are still so many talented people. Having figured out the truth and learned that the time had been changed to tomorrow morning, it perfectly matched his expectations. He had to admit he was very lucky. Su-Yun memorized the location of the archaeological team and their departure time. After finishing this, he closed the browser. Then, he sensed the state of the faith threads within his body. A rough count revealed that there were already over 5,000 densely packed threads. Sure enough, with time, my followers have increased again. With the real world as my faith ATM, it seems that the next advancement is not far off. The increase in strength not only brought more character slots, but also gave him more confidence against those large tribes. What identity should I use tomorrow? The Sword Immortal identity, or, never mind, appearing as the Sword Immortal too often isn't good. I'll just use a new identity. Thinking this, he fell into thought again. What new identity should I use this time? After much thought, an identity suddenly came to mind, and his eyes lit up. A priest. As for which religion, it was undoubtedly the Catholic Church, the world's most populous religion. The idea of becoming a priest was a well-considered one. The Catholic Church, as the religion with the most followers, was indeed quite complex. This identity could be considered a test of the Catholic Church. If there were truly extraordinary individuals, perhaps they could be detected. If not, even better. Starting with this identity, he could gradually build his power, and perhaps eventually use it as a springboard to become the new one god. Chapter 92, Playing a New Identity. Su-Yun had considered impersonating God, but the possibility of that god's authenticity made him extremely wary. After all, if it were real, the sheer number of followers would be overwhelming. Even without supernatural powers in reality, his current abilities wouldn't be enough to convincingly portray the god. It felt like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Besides this, Su-Yun's biggest concern was the sheer number of followers. He feared that gaining too many followers at once could lead to negative consequences, such as having their personalities distorted by the immense power of faith, or being reborn through the god's possession. Although these were just possibilities he imagined, they weren't entirely impossible in the world of gods. So, while he might impersonate God in the future, he decided to forego that option for now, opting to start with easier challenges. Let's change my appearance first. Su-Yun smiled slightly. It was time for another makeover. Standing before the mirror, he suddenly noticed a problem. This priest I'm playing should be a Westerner, right? But this black hair is a bit off. Go buy a wig, Su-Yun thought, troubled. Legend has it that gods can change their appearance at will, some even transforming into animal bodies, like Zeus and Loki. These two gods even did unspeakable things in animal forms. How come I'm at a Waterloo? He sighed. I don't ask to become an animal, just change my appearance, right? Su-Yun muttered to himself. Wait, suddenly, his thoughts stopped. I haven't even tried, how can I be sure I can't do it? Thinking of this, he hesitated. It shouldn't be possible. With a somewhat uncertain mindset, Su-Yun mobilized the divine power within his body, while simultaneously thinking about changing his appearance. Maybe, unexpectedly, as soon as he thought this, a portion of the divine power within him was inexplicably consumed. Then, in reality, Su-Yun's appearance began to change. His originally jet black hair turned into a brilliant gold, and his face also began to change, transforming from an Eastern appearance to a Western one. He watched with his eyelids twitching. Such an unscientific thing, done just by thinking about it. This is idealism. This event caused Su-Yun to fall into deep thought. He had always seemed to apply materialism to idealism, but this incident proved that while materialism might have some merit, it was definitely more inclined towards idealism when it came to deities. There were some unscientific things that materialism couldn't achieve, but that didn't mean he, as a deity, couldn't. Like himself and the god of ice, the two gods were clearly of the same level, yet the god of ice was utterly powerless against him. The difference in their strength was vast, which was because the god of ice lacked imagination, while he possessed it. This also showed that deities were more inclined towards the mind. Understanding this, Su-Yun felt relieved, but also somewhat embarrassed by his previous use of such a simple and crude disguise. Compared to before, not only had his appearance changed, but it also didn't cause him any discomfort. Aside from the automatic consumption of divine power to maintain this appearance, it completely surpassed his previous methods by a huge margin. Examining his face, Su-Yun was somewhat dissatisfied. His face was neither ugly nor handsome, feeling somewhat incongruous. He hadn't been focused on success, which led him to not properly consider a satisfactory appearance. Let's begin. Su-Yun took a deep breath, a smile playing on his lips, and began his cosmetic surgery plan. A higher nose, a more masculine face, a taller build. After a full half-hour of modifications, Su-Yun finally achieved a face he was extremely satisfied with. The person appearing in the mirror was practically like the legendary sun god. Tall and upright, perfectly conforming to the golden ratio of Western aesthetics. Brilliant golden hair, fair skin, a high-bridged nose, and eyes as blue as the sky. Unlike the aloof and ethereal face and temperament of the sword immortal, this face was masculine and handsome, full of male hormones, like a walking human penis, a face that could make most women scream and their legs go weak. And because of his role as a priest, his temperament was somewhat different, gentle and approachable, with an inviolable sense of holiness. This undeniably attractive appearance, coupled with an aura of unapproachability, created a paradox that amplified his allure. Combined with his white priest's robes, he was the kind of person who would draw attention on the street because of his looks, yet whose aura prevented any impure thoughts, even inspiring an instinctive liking and the impression of a good person, only to be friend-zoned. Su-Yun surveyed himself with satisfaction, but then felt something was missing. Something's missing. He looked at his chest, and with a thought, a pure white cross pendant appeared on his chest, adorned with gathered light. After finishing with a pendant, he looked at his right hand. Clenching his fist, light rapidly condensed, and a thick, hardcover, pure white book appeared in his hand. 3 platinum gold characters were prominently displayed on the cover, Genesis. However, Su-Yun hesitated, then temporarily concealed the platinum gold words Genesis. Having completed his task, he was now completely satisfied. May the holy light bless you. Su-Yun gestured with a book in his hand, his body radiating light, appearing mysterious and holy. He smiled slightly. Next, it's time to go to our destination and wait. The Kunlun Mountains, also known as Kunlun Su, the first sacred mountain of China, the mountain of 10,000 ancestors, Kunlun Hill, or Jade Mountain, are a major mountain range in Central Asia and the main trunk of the Western Mountain Range of China. The mountain range stretches from the eastern Pamir Plateau, traversing Xinjiang in Tibet, extending into Qinghai Province, with a total length of approximately 2,500 kilometers, an average altitude of 5,506,000 meters, a width of 130-200 kilometers, narrower in the west and wider in the east, and a total area of over 500,000 square kilometers. The Kunlun Mountains hold a prominent position in the cultural history of the Chinese nation as the ancestor of 10,000 mountains, and the ancients called them the ancestor of the dragon veins of China. The Classic of Mountains and Seas describes the Kunlun Mountains as one of the most mysterious places. In ancient mythology, the Kunlun Mountains are inhabited by the goddess Queen Mother of the West, a deity with a human head and a leopard's body, attended by two bluebirds. She is a principal deity in Taoism, sharing the responsibility with the Eastern King Duke in guiding men and women towards immortality. Historical figures such as King Yu of Zhou and the first emperor of Qin have also visited the Kunlun Mountains seeking immortality and the elixir of life. Furthermore, many sages and powerful figures throughout history have achieved enlightenment and ascended to heaven here, leaving behind countless legends. Numerous myths and wondrous stories have continuously embellished the Kunlun Mountains, solidifying their unparalleled status as the ancestral dragon vein and the source of all mountains. Nearby lies the Valley of Death, a place known as the Gateway to Hell, infamous worldwide as one of the 5 most notorious death valleys. And today, an uninvited group of guests has arrived on the Kunlun Mountains. Chapter 93, Heading Towards Death Valley. White clouds dotted the sky, and the morning sun shone down. 5 specially made off-road vehicles sped along the mountainside, kicking up clouds of dust. Hello everyone, I'm Chen Ling. Our archaeological team is on our way to the Kunlun Mountain Death Valley. Please pray for a safe journey. In the front passenger seat of the first vehicle, a beautiful young woman in her early 20s, dressed elegantly, clasped her hands together in prayer before the camera. The live stream equipment in front of her displayed a barrage of comments, and upon closer inspection, the distinctive logo of Tigerfish TV could be seen. This was Tigerfish's live stream channel. The archaeological team had collaborated with Tigerfish TV, resulting in a surge of over 300,000 real viewers right from the start. Under the special equipment, the picture and signal were smooth and clear, almost flawless. Go for it, haha, since it's Sister Chen Ling, we'll definitely listen. We wish the archaeological team a safe journey, and, they're so mean, did they disappear halfway? Don't think I don't know. Chen Ling smiled helplessly at the jokes from the viewers. However, she was already used to working in front of the camera, and she tried her best to create a lively atmosphere, slowly recounting the information about Kunlun Mountain. As you all know, there are many unsolved mysteries in the world, and even now, there are many things that science cannot explain. These mysteries are shrouded in an air of mystery. For example, Kunlun Mountain, which we are going to talk about today, is the first sacred mountain in my country. Legend has it that it is the residence of the Queen Mother of the West, and it has always been guarded by heavenly soldiers and generals. There are also legends of the Jade Pool Wonderland and the Peach Forest. Although we are now in an age of atheism, the veil of mystery surrounding Kunlun Mountain has never been lifted, and it is even heavily guarded year-round. In addition, it seems that immortals appeared in the world not long ago, which adds to the mystery of this place, and our destination, Death Valley, has been off-limits to tourists for a long time. Does it really house immortals, or does it hide some great secret? Our archaeological team will reveal all this to you, so please don't go away. Chen Ling blinked her beautiful eyes and whetted the audience's appetite with her mysterious tone. Teasing people, bad review, great. Bad review, a barrage of negative reviews flooded the screen. Chen Ling smiled slightly, seeing that she had piqued the audience's interest. At this moment, she pointed the camera to the left. Everyone sees the person next to me, right? Do you want me to introduce him? A man in his 30s with a tanned, muscular build and rugged features, driving a car, immediately looked at the camera with sharp, eagle-like eyes after noticing the gaze. Wow, so cool. Who is this? Some viewers in the live chat were captivated. See this guy? His name is Wu Wei, and he's a retired Special Forces soldier, Chen-Ling winked and said with a grin. Holy crap, he's a soldier. Love soldier brother, please give me your WeChat ID, leave your contact information, I'm offering a lot of money for a son. Is something weird mixed in upstairs? 666, PFFT. Chen-Ling covered her mouth, barely suppressing her laughter as she watched the comments. Wu Wei, with his sharp eyes, noticed the comments and gave Chen-Ling a sharp look. Chen-Ling sensed something was wrong and quickly changed the subject. Alright, now that we've introduced this gentleman, let's take a look at these two behind us. As the camera turned, two elderly men in the back seat were revealed. One was an old Taoist priest with his hair tied up in a bun, wearing a Taoist robe, and his hair and beard were half white and half black. The other was a scholarly-looking man in his 50s wearing glasses. The two men smiled when they saw the camera. I don't recognize the one with the glasses, but this old Taoist priest looks familiar. I think so too. Comments floated across the screen. Looks like someone recognized him, Chen-Ling introduced. This Taoist priest appeared at the previous martial arts tournament. He is the head of Wudang Mountain, Taoist King Guyan, and the one next to him is Professor Wang, a senior professor from the archaeology department. These two are special advisors that our archaeological team brought in to help us unravel the secrets of that palace. As soon as she finished speaking, the live stream chat erupted in discussion. Wait a minute, Sister Chen-Ling. The archaeology professor is fine, nothing to say, but why bring the Wudang Mountain sect leader along? It is indeed a bit strange. Seeing these comments, Chen-Ling quickly explained, our archaeological team considered that the area we're exploring might involve some feng shui and numerology issues, so after careful consideration, we specially invited this sect leader. I see, Dragon Vein locating, looking forward to it. Upon hearing about feng shui and numerology, netizens became excited, sending out various comments rapidly, clearly having thought of something and all very excited. Scanning the comments, Chen-Ling smiled helplessly. In her opinion, netizens were too imaginative. The reality of feng shui and numerology was certainly not as mystical as depicted in TV shows and movies. However, she didn't choose to correct them. Wasn't this better? This level of hype was exactly what she needed. And so, while picking topics, the vehicle gradually ascended, the altitude increasing. When the altitude was nearly 1,000 meters. It's so cold. Sigh. Viewers, I really didn't expect that we'd encounter our first difficulty so soon after starting up the mountain. Chen-Ling shivered. It hadn't been so bad at the foot of the mountain, but the higher she went, the colder it got. She touched her arms outside her short-sleeved shirt, shivering slightly. Netizens immediately commented. Didn't expect you to dress like that? Now you're freezing for beauty. Haha, that's right, freezing for beauty. Looking at Chen-Ling's exposed arms and legs, everyone gloated. Sigh, you guys are so heartless, Chen-Ling sighed in frustration. Then, to the astonishment of the netizens, she suddenly pulled out a down jacket and other warm clothes from a hidden corner in the back seat. Luckily I was prepared, she said, putting on the clothes one by one, and deliberately patting her chest as if to breathe a sigh of relief. Netizens, what should I do? I want to hit someone, and it's a woman. You're not the first. The vehicles quickly stopped, and the dozen or so people in the group put on thick coats. Far from the group, Su-Yun also stopped. He floated about 10 centimeters off the ground, looking very relaxed. Flying didn't require much mental effort. And after advancing to second-level god, maintaining this state for a long time was a piece of cake. He felt no fatigue whatsoever, as if he had just gone on a picnic. And that's exactly what he did, appreciatively surveying his surroundings. As for the chilly air, it was even less of a problem for someone capable of high-altitude flight. If he weren't unfamiliar with the path to Death Valley, he would have liked to sneak in alone. I'll find a chance to sneak in when we're almost there. Su-Yun smiled slightly. Thanks to Digby's guise for the 999 book coins reward. Thanks to for the 23 book coins reward. Chapter 94, The Eve of Entering the Valley. Soon, after resting, the convoy resumed its journey. 5 or 6 hours later, the archaeological team had reached an altitude of over 3,000 meters. This area was sparsely populated, with snow covering the ground in all directions, though fortunately not too thick, preventing the convoy from encountering any difficulties. We're almost at the last herder's house, let's rest there before continuing, Wu Wei, the driver, said in a low voice. There are few people we're waiting for there, they'll lead us to the palace. Chen-Ling paused slightly, then nodded. She glanced at the live stream, where the number of viewers hadn't increased much due to the monotonous journey. A barrage of comments popped up, all asking who those people were. Chenling smiled slightly and explained, "There are 3 people we're waiting for. They were the first discoverers of the palace, we'll need them to find it." Upon hearing this, the viewers immediately understood. I really don't know what kind of daredevil they are, to actually find that palace. Yeah, I'm suspicious. I always feel those 3 aren't simple. +1. The barrage of comments kept floating across the screen, clearly showing that netizens were very curious about the trio, their expectations soaring, and some even suspected that the 3 of them were not simple people. Seeing these questions, Chenling couldn't help but smile awkwardly. I don't know either. I heard they were some kind of adventurers. It shouldn't be what you think. I don't believe it. +10086. In this way, amidst the banter between a group of netizens and Chenling, only half an hour later, the convoy quickly arrived at the herder's home. It was a flat, almost deserted plain, completely empty, with rows of white yurts standing nearby. Not far from the yurts, there were flocks of sheep and other animals enclosed by fences. Hearing the sound of car engines, the herders inside the yurts came out one after another, looking at the 5 off-road vehicles with surprise. Finally here, in the last tent, 2 men and a woman stood up at the sound of the engines. They opened the tent and headed towards the convoy. Wu Wei was the first to open the car door and get out, followed by Chenling and the professor. Soon, the dozen or so people from the 5 cars gathered together. "You've arrived," Zhao Yuan and his 2 companions, along with a herdsman, greeted them. "You must be the discoverers?" "Hello." Professor Wang from the archaeological team, after a careful look, immediately approached them warmly. He extended his hand and shook hands with each of the 3. "Hello, my name is Wang Ren. What are your surnames?" "My name is Zhao Yuan," said the man in his 30s, seemingly the leader of the group, with a smile. "My name is Yang Dali," replied another robust man in his 30s. "Xia Wei," said the last woman, a woman in her 20s with a cool expression. After hearing their names, the dozen or so members of the archaeological team began to discuss. "They are the discoverers," Chenling and the netizens exclaimed in surprise. These 3 people seemed ordinary at first glance, but upon closer inspection, they possessed a special aura that prevented them from being underestimated. At this moment, the netizens' comments began to flood the screen. "Sister Chenling, go ask these 3 what they do. They seem a bit suspicious." Chenling caught a glimpse of the comments on the screen and, to satisfy the audience's curiosity and her own, asked, "What do you 3 do?" Her clear voice made Zhao Yuan and the other 2 pause slightly, turning to look at her. Zhao Yuan coughed and smiled slightly. "We're just guys who like to go on adventures in dangerous places. Don't worry about it." Hearing the expected answer, Chenling and the netizens were somewhat disappointed. Although they didn't quite believe it, without evidence, they couldn't find any way to refute it. "You must be tired. Let's go inside and talk," a middle-aged herdsman warmly invited them in. The archaeological team nodded and followed the herdsman into the largest yurt. After everyone sat down, the herdsman went out to prepare food. Now, only the archaeological team and 3 guys who claimed to be adventurers who had discovered the palace remained in the yurt. "What do you 3 know about that palace?" Wu Wei asked first. "Well, I don't know much about it either," Yang Dali chuckled. The others looked bewildered. Zhao Yuan glared at him and said apologetically, "Don't be offended, everyone, that's just how he is. Let me explain. It's like this. The 3 of them went to explore Death Valley, but during the exploration, an accident occurred, and they fell into a cave. Unable to get out temporarily, they explored the cave and accidentally discovered an ancient underground palace. Driven by curiosity, the 3 of them fearlessly went inside, but they didn't go very far. The palace was full of dangers, and they encountered a dangerous trap after only going a short distance, forcing them to retreat. This was the situation Yang Dali mentioned, which they didn't know much about. Very dangerous." Wu Wei and the others frowned and looked at each other. "Yes," Zhao Yuan's eyes were very serious. "You'd better think carefully. People might die in that place." After a moment of silence inside the yurt, someone broke the atmosphere. "Don't worry about that. We considered the potential dangers before we came. Danger can't stop us from pursuing the truth." In the archaeological team, Professor Wang's eyes burned with fervor, showing no fear whatsoever. On the contrary, the more dangerous it seemed, the more certain he was that the place was extraordinary. The others nodded in agreement, clearly having prepared beforehand. "All right, When are you leaving? Let us three know then. Zhao Yuan nodded, then led the other two out. Once they were gone, the archaeological team fell into discussion. Outside, Zhao Yuan and his two companions headed towards their lodgings. Brother Zhao, why did you report the location? That place looks like it's full of treasures. If we just take one item, we'll be rich, Yang Dali said with a regretful expression. You idiot. That place is so dangerous. Do you think we can handle it? You want to die? But I don't. Zhao Yuan gave him a look as if you were an idiot. Greed knows no bounds. Xia Wei rolled her eyes at him and said abruptly. Look at Xia Wei, and you. Zhao Yuan shook his head. Since it's so dangerous, why are we even going in? Yang Dali protested. You're so stupid. We just need to go in with them. With them holding the line, we can easily grab some benefits. Besides, aren't you curious about what that place is all about? That magnificent building is clearly not simple, Zhao Yuan explained. Oh. Chapter 95, A Figure in the Snow and Wind. After a brief rest, the group of over a dozen people, watched by the herdsmen, drove their off-road vehicles towards Death Valley. Su Yun smiled slightly and silently followed. Which way? Wu Wei turned to look at a middle-aged herdsman in the back seat. For safety's sake, and also because of some distrust, their archaeological team had specifically asked a herdsman to lead the way. Turn to the right, the middle-aged man first pointed in a direction, then confirmed, let's make this clear, I'll only take you to the entrance. From there, you'll have to fend for yourselves. I dare not go in. He looked apprehensive, seemingly very afraid of that place. That place is terrifying, Chenling asked on behalf of the netizens in the 5-person car. Noticing the four people's gazes, the middle-aged herdsman gave a bitter smile and explained, that place is terrifying. Even if the cattle and sheep are starving, we wouldn't dare go. You know about 1983, right? That year, some horses went in because they were greedy for the lush grass there, and some people went in to look for them. A few days later, good heavens, the horses appeared, but the people were gone, the herdsman recounted slowly. Afterwards, someone found a strange corpse on a small hill. The body was lying face up, its face already blackened, and its clothes were somewhat strange. The corpse's clothes were torn, its feet were bare, its eyes were wide open in anger, its mouth was agape, and its hunting rifle was still clutched in its hand, a look of unresolved death. Even more perplexing was that there were no wounds or signs of attack on the body, as if it had seen something terrifying before dying and was simply frightened to death. These kinds of things happen frequently, and this isn't the only strange thing. We all say that demons haunt that place, eating animals and people. If you're unlucky enough to go in, you'll be eaten by the demons, the herdsman said, his face filled with fear. Ah, Chen Ling, who had never heard of this before, screamed in fright. Holy crap, that's terrifying, it feels like I'm listening to a ghost story. Luckily it's daytime, or I would have been scared to death. Netizens were still shaken. Could we be one of the missing? Chen Ling muttered to herself. Wu Wei's eyes darkened slightly upon hearing this, and the old Taoist King Guyan and Professor Wang's expressions also turned somewhat grim. Professor Wang looked at Chen Ling worriedly. Chen girl, if you don't want to go, you can go back with this herdsman later. Chen Ling hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth. No, I've decided to go and see. The herdsman looked at them regretfully and shook his head. In his opinion, the chances of these people coming out after going in were very small. This might be the last time they saw each other. Soon, the group arrived at the outside of Death Valley. Along the way, they encountered some armed police and military camps. After explaining their situation, they were allowed to pass. During this process, they also learned that the military was stationed there to prevent tourists from entering recklessly. As for whether that was truly the reason, that's a matter of opinion. At least Su Yun, who was secretly following behind, found the troops somewhat strange. Are they really here to guard against tourists? He thought, skeptical. He'd rather believe they were conducting experiments, hence the heavy guard. After all, this place did indeed have research value. After saying goodbye to the herders at the entrance, the 5 vehicles drove into Death Valley. From afar, Death Valley resembled a gaping abyss, and the convoy was the prey at its entrance. After driving for a while, the convoy stopped, realizing that the vehicles couldn't continue and they had to walk. The archaeological team sighed regretfully, finally having no choice but to pack up their equipment and begin walking. Fortunately, after walking for a short while, according to Zhao Yuan and the other two, they weren't far from there. Almost there, Let's walk for another half hour, Zhao Yuan said, looking around and turning to the others. White breath escaped his mouth, indicating the temperature was a bit low. Hearing this, the archaeological team perked up and immediately became more alert. A few minutes after they started walking, the sky suddenly changed drastically. What? The sky, which had been cloudy just moments before, instantly turned dark, and a strong wind swept in. Soon after the wind arrived, snowflakes began to fall. The temperature plummeted, and everyone, despite wearing thick clothes, shivered. It's snowing, my god, the weather changed so fast, will they be alright? Netizens expressed their concerns. What do we do? The archaeological team panicked, and even Zhao Yuan and his two companions' expressions changed slightly. A woman in her 30s with an ordinary appearance named Peng Ronqian muttered to herself, looking at the snowstorm, I didn't believe the weather could change so quickly before, but now I do. It's like a face-changing act, it was normal before, how did it change like this? The old Taoist King Guise plucked some of his beard with his right hand, secretly regretting coming to this place. If he hadn't been invited, and if it weren't for the reputation of the immortal palace, and his decision to take a gamble for the sake of immortality, he wouldn't have come to this strange place. Let's keep going, Zhao Yuan considered for a moment. Before the snow gets too heavy, we should be able to get there before then. He looked at the others, wondering if they would object. The archaeological team thought for a moment and finally nodded. They were already this far, they couldn't give up because of a little snow. So the group quickened their pace and hurried towards their destination. Looks like the time has come. Su Yun's lips curled slightly, he felt it was the perfect moment to make his appearance. With that thought, he moved swiftly, flying towards the front of the group. He stopped after a short while, smiled, and said, now it's just a matter of waiting. The group ran rapidly, their mouths and noses suffocating as they struggled to breathe. At an altitude of over 3,000 meters, the environment would be low pressure and low oxygen. If they hadn't taken medication before entering the mountains, their situation would have been even worse. Just a few more minutes, we'll be there soon, Zhao Yuan encouraged them. The others gritted their teeth and nodded, quickening their pace even further. However, after walking only a few steps, Wu Wei, Zhao Yuan, and the others who were running at the front suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Why did you stop? They were puzzled and stopped, supporting their knees. Look! There seems to be someone over there, Zhao Yuan said in shock. How could that be? Is it real? There's someone in this god-forsaken place. Whether it was the hundreds of thousands of netizens or the dozen or so people on the scene, they were all shocked by this statement. But after saying that, they looked in the direction Zhao Yuan was pointing, and their faces immediately froze. There really was someone. In the swirling snow, not far away, there seemed to be a white figure sitting cross-legged on a high place. Seeing this figure, they looked at each other. Could it be a dead person? As soon as these words were spoken, most of them trembled, obviously somewhat frightened. This was understandable, as they had seen the carcasses of various animals along the way, so it was inevitable that they would make such a connection. Moreover, this god-forsaken place was clearly not suitable for human habitation, and seeing a cross-legged figure here just didn't seem right. They only briefly considered the possibility before immediately deciding that a living person couldn't possibly be here. Especially not in a cross-legged position, that was even more impossible. Did they really think this was a sacred place for cultivation? Both they and the viewers watching the live stream rejected the possibility. Perhaps it's a victim. Let's go take a look, Chen Ling suggested. The others nodded in agreement. As members of the archaeological team, they were quite confident. As they slowly approached, the white figure gradually revealed its full form. Upon closer inspection, everyone was shocked. Thanks to for the 666 book coins donation, thank you to for the 588 book coins donation, thank you to for the 100 book coins donation, thank you to then, for the 100 book coins donation. Chapter 96 Michelle. What came into view was not a dead body, but a young man dressed in a white priest's robe, a delicate white cross hanging around his neck, holding a beautiful white book, sitting cross-legged on a high rock. This young man appeared to be in his early 20s, with brilliant blonde hair, a high-bridged nose, and deep-set features. His overall appearance was so handsome it was almost divine, as dazzling as the legendary sun god. The gazes of everyone present, and the hundreds of thousands of spectators, were involuntarily drawn to him, even holding their breath as if afraid to disturb him. What a handsome man! This thought arose in everyone's minds at that moment. They had to admit that he was absolutely the most masculine and handsome person they had ever seen. Even some narcissistic individuals felt a pang of inferiority in comparison. So handsome, is this a god? My heart is beating so fast. After recovering from their shock, netizens immediately began to excitedly comment, even causing the live chat to lag and almost obscure the screen. You, who are you? Chenling stammered in astonishment. She had no doubt that the person before her was definitely alive. This was easily evident from their normal appearance. More importantly, no one would associate a dead person with this. The answer was immediately rejected in their minds. The moment she asked, everyone's spirits lifted, hoping for a response. And as they expected, the figure slowly opened their eyes. Azure eyes, as clear as the sky, gazed upon the crowd. Those being looked upon immediately felt a sense of warmth, as if they saw God's love for humanity reflected in those eyes. The gentleness seemed all-encompassing, soothing even the most gloomy hearts, creating an urge to confide all their grievances. Hello, Su Yun smiled slightly, his reassuring voice ringing out. He then stood up, his perfectly proportioned body pleasing to the eye. Most importantly, a special aura emanated from him, an inviolable, sacred aura. Only then did everyone's attention shift to his attire, which had been overshadowed by his good looks, a white priest's robe. No wonder he has that aura, a priest, everyone suddenly realized. You're a priest, why are you here? Do you need help? Wu Wei, regaining his senses, immediately asked a question. This was Death Valley. There were living people here, something was wrong. The others also thought of this and immediately looked at him with suspicion. Don't be nervous, I'm a Christian monk. I came to Death Valley specifically to cultivate. You can call me Michelle. Su Yun revealed a gentle smile that put everyone at ease. Michelle, the archaeological team members repeated. Zhao Yuang noticed a key point and exclaimed, You mean, you came to Death Valley specifically to cultivate? This crucial statement immediately shocked the archaeological team and netizens, leaving them bewildered and deeply impressed. My God, the Valley of Death, which everyone avoids like the plague, is actually used for cultivation. That's incredible. Did I hear that right? A cacophony of voices rose and fell. Previously, everyone had thought the handsome priest had entered this deathly place out of necessity or by accident, and they felt pity for him. However, the truth was quite the opposite. What had they heard? He had actually walked involuntarily. Those who had joked about it being a sacred cultivation ground were now blushing, their faces filled with disbelief. Looking at the priest's godlike, profound face, Chenling blushed slightly and said with concern, Father Michel, this is the Valley of Death? It's far too dangerous. You should leave quickly. That's right, this is one of the most dangerous places, it's too dangerous. You should get out of here. The archaeological team and Zhao Yuang and the others all spoke up, their expressions filled with worry. Su Yun's handsome face and seemingly harmless aura, as if bathed in holy light, made them feel no threat whatsoever. Instead, they were worried something might happen to him. If something were to happen to such a good priest, and it was because they hadn't warned him, they would surely feel uneasy and guilty. You don't need to worry, Su Yun said devoutly, mimicking the way his followers perform their faith. As a devout believer, as long as I am sincere, God will protect me and keep danger away from me. As he spoke, he thought to himself, yes, that's right. As God, I will definitely protect myself, and danger will stay away from me. The others were stunned. From Michelle's expression, they saw his piety and unwavering trust in God. In modern society, there are still such devout believers. This is faith. His devout and unwavering demeanor unconsciously infected everyone, making them almost believe that God truly existed. Those who had initially intended to dissuade him from believing in superstition unconsciously shut their mouths. They felt that if they tried to persuade him with superstition, it would be an insult to this devout priest. They admired such a pure person and couldn't bear to speak against it. Netizens also commented with admiration. As someone who was originally a non-believer and indifferent to priests, I suddenly realized that there really are such true believers, not those priests whose facades seem fake. My admiration for priests has suddenly skyrocketed. If all priests were like this, I'd say I'd want as many as I could. I'd absolutely support them. I feel the same way, me too. After a series of upvotes and supportive comments, someone suddenly spoke up abruptly. But we must understand that God is just a legend in this world, not a reality. Otherwise, how could we not have discovered him by now? Father Michel is devout, I don't deny that. I admire him, but can piety really guarantee his safety? He's just an ordinary person. We'd better advise him. If we wait until something happens to Father Michel, it will be too late." These words were like a bucket of cold water, instantly sobering everyone up and chilling their hearts. They were deeply worried about the handsome Father Michel. They had to admit that Death Valley was not a place for ordinary people, and if Father Michel continued to stay there, something bad might really happen. "Sister Chen Ling, please persuade him." Sister Chen Ling. The flood of comments from netizens caught Chen Ling's attention, and she naturally saw their messages. Chapter 97 Entering the Cave. Chen Ling anxiously tried to persuade him, and the others joined in. Unfortunately, no matter how they tried, Father Michel remained resolute. The wind and snow intensified, causing the archaeological team's expressions to change slightly. Su-Yun noticed this and, feigning curiosity, asked, "Where are you all going?" Because of his appearance and demeanor, the team didn't suspect anything and simply explained the situation. "Can I come along?" Su-Yun smiled slightly. "God arranged for us to meet here. He must want me to join you. With me here, I might be able to help you." Upon hearing this, Wu Wei and the others were surprised. They were speechless at this seemingly charlatan-like statement, and then somewhat amused. They didn't think Father Michel could be of any help. Priests were generally perceived as frail. Wu Wei and the other veterans in the team were confident that one of them could take on 3 Fathers Michel. "No, the palace we're going to is too dangerous. We could easily lose our lives," Zhao Yuang refused, disagreeing. The netizens, captivated by Su Yun's appearance, suddenly chimed in. "Sister Chen Ling, please agree. It's safer for Father Michel to stay with you than to let him stay here." "That's right, I think so too, I agree." Chen Ling, who was constantly watching the live stream, thought about it carefully after seeing the netizens' comments and quickly said, "I agree." Seeing the strange looks from the others, she quickly relayed the netizens' reasoning. Professor Wong and the others suddenly understood and also somewhat agreed with this approach. After confirming that Su Yun would indeed stay, they all agreed to Father Michel joining them. Compared to staying here, they felt it was safer to be together, so they could protect Father Michel. "Let's hurry. If we delay any longer, the snow will get heavier," Zhao Yuang said anxiously. "Let's go," Wu Wei quickly called out. A dozen or so archaeologists, along with Su Yun, hurried through the wind and snow towards their destination. The wind and snow howled. Su Yun glanced at the archaeologists beside him, and another group of 3 people who were barely visible in the distance. "Father Michel, your Mandarin is excellent." Chen Ling, holding her live streaming equipment, ran up to him, panting. The others walking ahead also perked up their ears, equally curious. Su Yun remained composed, calmly offering an excuse. "Yes, I'm very interested in your Chinese civilization, so I studied Mandarin for a long time." "Really?" Chen Ling gasped in surprise. To be praised by Father Michel, they all felt a surge of honor and pride. Su Yun nodded slightly. Chen Ling smiled broadly, about to continue the conversation to other topics. Suddenly, as if noticing something, she exclaimed, "Hey, Father Michel, why are you dressed so lightly?" This remark drew the attention of everyone, from those running through the snowstorm to netizens, who had previously overlooked a detail. Indeed, the netizens found Father Michel and the archaeological team's figures increasingly strange. One was wearing a thick down jacket, while the other wore a thin, white priest's robe. They examined the snowflakes closely, confirming they weren't fake, and were utterly shocked. Wearing so little in this weather, he's a superhuman. His physical abilities, young man, you, the old Taoist priest King Ain's lips trembled, giving him an envious glance. Getting old, getting old. These young people these days are amazing. This exclamation brought the others back to their senses, and they nodded in admiration. "Brother, how did you do that? Is this the result of your arduous training?" Yang Dali's eyes lit up, and he squeezed in with great interest. Zhao Yuang sighed. "I've heard some people aren't afraid of the cold, but I never thought I'd actually meet one in real life." Xia Wei looked at her bulky clothes and glanced enviously at Su Yun, who was wearing a thin, fitted priest's robe. What could Su Yun say? He could only vaguely reply, "I'm used to it." Upon hearing this, everyone imagined the arduous life of the devout Father Michel, his days filled with asceticism, and their eyes flashed with admiration. Truly a devout believer, his perseverance was beyond the reach of ordinary people like themselves. Chatting idly, after running for more than 10 minutes, led by Zhao Yuang, the group discovered a hidden cave entrance at the bottom of a cliff several meters high. Looking at the dark entrance, which wasn't covered by snow due to its location, They fell silent. The dark cave was like a gaping maw, waiting to devour those who dared to enter. Not to mention them, even netizens felt a bit creeped out of their skin, but because of the distance, they were mostly excited, because the most crucial moment had arrived. Zhao Yuan glanced to the hesitant archaeological team and took the lead, saying, "Let's go." He turned on his searchlight and flashlight and strode into the dark cave. The other two members of the trio followed. Professor Wang, thinking of the palace inside, gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go." Seeing the four of them go in, the others could only grit their teeth and follow. Fortunately, their bulky backpacks contained ample lighting equipment. With a searchlight and headlamp for each person, the darkness of the cave was quickly illuminated. As soon as they entered, the spacious cave came into view. "I didn't expect it to be so wide," someone in the team secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The group followed behind Zhao Yuan and the others, looking around as they slowly made their way towards their destination. "So many stalactites," Chenling exclaimed. The light shone on the rock ceiling, revealing rows of stalactites standing prominently above their heads. "Watch out!" Zhao Yuan's expression suddenly changed, and he shouted a warning. "What?" The others were stunned, not understanding why they needed to be careful. "Bats!" Zhao Yuan exclaimed. Wu Wei and the others subconsciously looked up at the rock ceiling, and just one glance sent chills down their spines, except for Suyun. Where Chenling's searchlight illuminated, rows upon rows of black bats hung densely from the rock ceiling, their sheer number chilling. "Run!" Zhao Yuan shouted, then exchanged a glance with Yang Dali and Xia Wei. The three of them moved with lightning speed, using every ounce of strength they had to run desperately into the depths of the cave. The others reacted quickly, instinctively following behind. Squeak, squeak, squeak. One by one, the bats were awakened by Chenling's light. While squeaking, the dense swarm of bats began to sway, and the next moment they frantically took flight. "Help! Ah!" Several women's screams and men's curses rang out. "Damn it!" Startled, the bats swarmed overhead. Suyun, standing in the crowd, frowned. Seeing the bats' intention to attack him, he felt a surge of impatience and a touch of mysophobia. To keep the bats away, he decided to take some covert action. Thanks to for the 636 book coins. Thanks to for the 588 book coins. Thanks to for the 588 book coins. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 98, Suspicious Points Regarding Father Michel. Running deeper into the cave, a swarm of black bats were about to attack Suyun as they would any other human when, at that moment, he subtly released an imperceptible pressure. This pressure was imperceptible to ordinary people, but to sensitive animals, it was a source of danger. The bats, upon approaching and sensing the pressure, paused, then began to squeak in panic. While the archaeological team screamed and cursed, suffering greatly from the bats' harassment, the bats began to desperately flee from Suyun. Thus, a strange scene unfolded in the cave. A large number of bats swarmed and attacked the archaeological team, but near Suyun's running figure, not a single bat remained. He seemed to be immune to them. "Ah! Help!" Chenling frantically waved her hands over her head, running in a panic. Her live streaming equipment swayed wildly. Thankfully she had prepared it by hanging it around her neck, otherwise it might have been broken. Even so, the live stream was still shaking, making viewers uncomfortable and worried about the safety of the archaeological team. Just then, Chenling approached Father Michel, who was already nearby, and in her panic, she noticed something surprising. "Huh? Why are there fewer bats?" she exclaimed in surprise. While others might not have had time to observe, netizens noticed a detail sooner or later. It seems there are very few bats, or even none, near Father Michel. "What's going on?" I noticed it too. These bats are treating people differently. This unbelievable scene stunned the netizens. They simply couldn't understand why the bats, all the same kind of bats, would choose their targets. As they ran, Chenling also gradually realized this and was immediately astonished. She turned her head in surprise to look at Father Michel, who seemed completely unaffected by the bats, as if he were on vacation. Just then, they slowly moved away from the swarm of bats. Everyone stopped, clutching their knees, panting heavily, clearly exhausted. "Father Michel, why?" Why weren't there any bats near you just now? Chen Ling asked in a gasp, enduring the pain in her chest. The sound echoed through the barely audible cave, leaving everyone stunned. No bats? What did that mean? They had all been terribly injured by bats just moments before. How could this be? Could it be? Immediately, everyone shone their searchlights on Father Michel. The more they observed, the stranger it seemed. Compared to their disheveled state, Father Michel was exactly as he had been before, even smiling gently when they looked at him. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he showed no signs of distress whatsoever. Compared to the others who had also experienced a bat attack, it was as if nothing had happened. Remembering Chen Ling's words, their initial uncertainty vanished, and an answer immediately came to mind. Chen, you mean there weren't any bats near Father Michel? Professor Wang asked in surprise. What's going on? Zhao Yong and the others also expressed their confusion. Fortunately, Chen Ling nodded confidently and then explained to everyone that the bats had gradually decreased and even disappeared as they approached the priest, immediately piquing everyone's suspicions. Su Yun smiled helplessly. Seeing the confused looks on the others' faces, he knew it would be difficult to explain. However, compared to being injured by bats and getting too close, he would still make the same choice even if he had to do it again. He just wanted to temporarily pretend to join the group, finding it interesting. But if he really made himself as disheveled as them for that, it wouldn't be worth it. God is protecting me, Su Yun said devoutly, holding a white book in his right hand. The others were speechless. God again? It seems Father Michel has been quite brainwashed by God. The others looked unconvinced. They wanted to say that if God was really that powerful, please show your protection to them, but they were afraid of discouraging Father Michel, so they suppressed their thoughts. Maybe Father Michel is just lucky, they thought this, believing luck was a stronger factor than God. In any case, whatever they thought, they rejected God as the least likely answer. Wu Wei suddenly spoke up. Let's continue. Okay, the others agreed, and then continued on their way. Compared to before, they now harbored more doubts about Father Michel, sensing something was amiss. Wu Wei, deep in thought, glanced at Father Michel discreetly, his hawk-like eyes narrowing slightly. What he didn't tell the others was that while the others were puzzled, he had noticed another strange detail. Everyone else looked exhausted and out of breath, but Father Michel was an exception. His complexion was perfectly normal, as if he hadn't experienced any strenuous exercise at all. Combined with his previous clothing and the bat incident, everything seemed unsettling. However, this was just his speculation. There were plausible explanations, so he kept quiet, as it would disrupt the group's atmosphere. Who exactly are you? Wu Wei's eyes narrowed slightly as he suddenly glanced at Father Michel again. He decided he needed to pay close attention to this priest. Perhaps he could notice more anomalies, figure out what was going on, gather more evidence, and then reveal the truth to everyone. He wasn't the only one who noticed something suspicious. Some netizens also expressed their doubts, wondering about Father Michel's physical condition. Sister Chen Ling, have you noticed? They told Chen Ling about their suspicions, and she paused slightly, glancing at Father Michel with some confusion. But as she looked closer, her gaze fell upon Father Michel's extremely handsome and holy face, and her face flushed slightly, her mind went blank, and all her doubts vanished. What am I thinking? Father Michel is such a good person, isn't it normal for him to be a little special? Chen Ling couldn't help but laugh at her own ignorant thoughts, while at the same time feeling even more admiration and respect for Father Michel for being able to do these things. After walking for a while, Chen Ling noticed the atmosphere was a bit quiet, so she thought for a moment and decided to speak up, intending to liven things up for the live stream viewers. Thanks to 111 for the 100 Kidian coins reward. Chapter 99 Mysterious Black Shadow. A crisp sound echoed through the quiet cave. This journey has been fraught with difficulties, not only from wind and snow, but also from bat attacks. We don't know what lies ahead. Let's all pray for a smooth trip, Chen Ling sighed. Go Chen Ling. You'll succeed, we're watching you, keep going. This sentiment resonated with netizens, who expressed their concern and anxiety for their situation. Seeing the encouragement from the netizens, Chen Ling smiled gently. What's that sound? Wu Wei listened intently, as if he had noticed something. What did you hear? Professor Wang asked curiously. It's groundwater. There's an underground river ahead. Xia Wei, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. An underground river. Hearing this, the archaeological team was surprised, then frowned. Won't that river affect our progress? We didn't bring any inflatable rafts, Professor Wang said with concern. Don't worry, Xiaowei replied calmly. The others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Suyun followed the group for a short while, and as the sound of flowing water grew clearer, a river appeared before them. It was a pitch-black river, its bottom invisible. Whether it was due to its depth or an illusion caused by insufficient light, it sent a shiver down their spines. Darkness always evokes fear. My God, it's so dark. How deep must it be? Terrifying. The netizens' comments were filled with dread. Luckily, there's a path beside it, Chenling said with relief. Beside the dark river was a path, barely half a meter wide, just wide enough for a person to pass through, allowing them to cross without having to ford the river. Otherwise, crossing such a dark river would have been unthinkable for them, who knew what kind of monsters lurked at the bottom. Human beings' instinctive fear of the dark would have conjured up all sorts of wild imaginings. Let's go. Crossing the river isn't actually dangerous, Zhao Yuang said, noticing the others' fear and offering reassurance. He then took the lead and stepped onto the rocky path. Be careful, the path might be slippery. Zhao Yuang and his two companions led the way. The rest of the archaeological team exchanged glances, and finally, led by Wu Wei, they gritted their teeth and followed. However, they were all very cautious, not only leaning against the rock wall but also trying their best to avoid looking at the dark river. Suyun, walking at the back, casually glanced at the river before nonchalantly stepping onto the narrow rocky path. Holding a book, unlike the others who tried to stay close to the wall, he walked as if it were a normal path, with remarkable stability. He was indifferent to the dark river. If he fell, so be it. What could it do to him? He wasn't one of those fragile mortals. Wu Wei, walking ahead against the wall, subconsciously turned to look at Father Michel behind him, but his pupils contracted at the first glance. What had he seen? Father Michel remained completely unfazed by the dark river, showing no fear whatsoever. This composure, even a retired special forces soldier like himself couldn't resist leaning against the wall in this black river. He could tell the other man genuinely showed no fear, there was no faking it. Wu Wei stopped, and Chen Ling, walking behind him, couldn't go any further. She asked in confusion, "Why did you stop?" Wu Wei paused, then pointed to Father Michel, who was a short distance away. Father Michel, he. Chen Ling and the others immediately looked over, only to see the priest walking normally. After a moment of confusion, they all froze. Suyun noticed everyone in front had stopped and smiled gently. "Is something wrong, Father Michel? Aren't you afraid of falling in?" Zhao Yuan couldn't hold back any longer and blurted out. "Yes, the river is so dark, even I, old Yang, am scared." Yang Dali shrank back slightly. Facing everyone's gaze, Suyun remained calm and composed, observing them gently. After a moment's thought, he spoke softly, "As long as you hold faith in your hearts, God's power will be with you, and fear will be far away." Zhao Yuan and the others understood. Their eyes glazed over for a moment as they looked at the holy Michel, and they had a strange feeling that Michel, who was teaching them, seemed to radiate holy light, a light so dazzling. Unlike Michel's simple words before, at this moment they truly recognized the power of faith. It was not false or non-existent. At least, it could exist in the heart. This is the power of God. Faith, heart. They seemed to understand what faith was. It wasn't foolishness, but a firm goal and direction in one's heart, a power that could bring strength to the heart, a kind of guidance. At this moment, not only them, but even hundreds of thousands of netizens, some of whom were dazed, more or less understood something. "Father, although I still don't believe that God really exists, at this moment I acknowledge your faith." Xiaowei broke the silence, looking at Michel with a serious face. "Me too. Faith should be a power that can strengthen the heart, right?" Professor Wang couldn't help but exclaim. The screen was flooded with comments from netizens, all agreeing with this point. Wu Wei stared intently at Michel, increasingly unable to understand the priest. His unusual behavior and inner strength astonished him. Seeing that lingering on the discussion wasn't a good idea, he said, "It's not safe here. We should leave as soon as possible." The others nodded, and the group resumed their journey to the palace. A dozen minutes later, the journey was calm, and everyone's fear of the underground river lessened considerably. Moreover, Zhao Yuang said they only needed to walk a few more minutes to cross it. Relaxed, Yang Dali suddenly turned the searchlight, shining it directly into the water. He was curious, "What's down there?" Whether it was his first time here or this time, he hadn't studied the river. He felt that if he missed this opportunity, he might never have another chance. So, he stared intently at the illuminated underground river. Yang Dali, what are you doing again? Xiao Wei, walking behind him, frowned. Upon hearing this, Zhao Yuang, who was at the front, frowned. You idiot, I'm warning you, don't cause any more trouble. Yang Dali was taken aback. He had been somewhat indignant, but then seemed to realize something, and his tone softened. What's there to be afraid of? It's just a river, what could possibly happen? Besides, look, there's nothing in the river. Hearing Yang Dali's words, everyone turned their attention to the dark river. The originally murky water was instantly dispelled by the powerful beam of the searchlights. The water wasn't as murky as they had imagined. In fact, it was quite clear. However, they frowned. The river was rather deep. Even with the brightness of the searchlights, they couldn't see to the bottom. See? There's nothing there. Yang Dali chuckled and moved the searchlight away. Xiao Wei rolled her eyes at him, and Zhao Yuang glared back. Yang Dali, however, remained nonchalant and continued talking and laughing. Unbeknownst to everyone, as the lights were moved away, a dark shadow rapidly rose from the water's surface. Thank you for the 100 book coins. Chapter 100, Attacked. What is that? Su Yun paused slightly. The darkness didn't affect his vision much, so he was the first to see something rising from the water. The shadow drew closer, and he frowned slightly, glancing at the archaeological team before warning in a low voice, be careful, something's coming up from underwater. What? Zhao Yuang and the others were stunned, not understanding what was happening. Before they could even be alert, the water surface changed. Splash. 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 After a series of splashing sounds, a large shadow appeared on the surface, much to everyone's astonishment. Oh my god, Yang Dali panicked, immediately shining his searchlight in the direction of the shadow. As the light enveloped the water, the large shadow became clear. Black fish were emerging from the water, densely packed together, forming a large patch of shadow. Looking at the exposed fish, everyone was puzzled, unsure why they had risen to the surface. Professor Wang, observing the fish's appearance, had a frightening thought. Run. Those are piranhas, he shouted in panic. The others were slightly taken aback, then panicked. Run. Just thinking about such a large swarm of piranhas made their hearts pound. They didn't need to wonder why these fish were surfacing. It was definitely for them. Run. Zhao Yuang, at the front, mustered all his strength, and the others quickened their pace. Yang Erlangzi, look what you've done, Zhao Yuang complained urgently as they ran. How should I know? Yang Dali tried to retort. But before he could finish speaking, screams rang out from behind. The piranhas, having adjusted to the light, suddenly leaped out of the water, baring their blood-red teeth and biting at the group on the narrow rocky path. The screams were from those attacked behind them. Piranhas leaped up, attacking every part of their bodies with incredible speed, a terrifying sight. This is bad. Wu Wei's expression changed drastically. Normally it wouldn't be so bad, but this place was so narrow, if they accidentally fell into the water, it would be the end. Seeing the panicked team behind him, he quickly shouted, don't panic. We're wearing thick clothes. As long as you protect your heads, they can't do anything to you, just be careful, whatever you do, don't fall into the water. Upon hearing this, the team, who had been frantically fighting off the piranhas, immediately realized what was happening. Yet, our down jackets are so thick, it won't be easy for these fish to bite through them. They calmed down a bit, and their movements became less chaotic, each person trying their best to protect their heads. However, even so, their current situation was extremely precarious. One wrong move and something terrible could happen. Everyone was in a sorry state, screaming in pain. Su Yun, walking at the very back, heard the damn talk about thick clothes, looked at his own thin clothing, and his lips twitched slightly. At that moment, several piranhas attacked him from the air. He could even see the sharp teeth in their mouths. Frowning slightly, these fish were truly annoying. He stretched out his right palm and swiftly slapped the piranhas in the air, delivering several blows. A blur flashed past. Slap 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 slap. Several powerful blows damaged the piranhas' internal organs, knocking them unconscious, likely fatal from a single strike. Casually withdrawing his hand, Su Yun realized this couldn't continue. Some people ahead had exposed areas bitten and bleeding from the fish's bites. There was even a chance someone might fall into the water and be devoured by these cruel creatures. Suyun sighed softly and quietly released his inner pressure. Compared to last time, this pressure was much stronger and had a much wider range. The piranhas on the surface froze, as if sensing something terrifying. After a few seconds of hesitation, they scattered, splashing water everywhere. The disheveled archaeological team ahead were stunned. They noticed the piranha's attack frequency gradually decreasing, until finally they all disappeared. Even some of the fish that had been clinging tightly to their clothes suddenly flipped over and fell into the water. This scene left them dumbfounded, completely bewildered. Suyun smiled slightly, about to say something, when he felt a sharp pain in his finger. He frowned slightly and raised his palm to look. A tiny cut was visible, blood seeping from it. With just one glance, he guessed what had happened. He must have been too fast when swatting the fish, and the piranha's teeth were very sharp. He had accidentally cut his skin, and because the wound was so small, it hadn't been noticed until now. Suyun guessed the cause, but he didn't pay it any mind, because his attention was drawn to another scene. The blood flowing from his injured finger was a pale gold. The pale gold blood shimmered on his finger, emitting a faint glow, so conspicuous in the darkness. This was the first time he had seen his own blood, which was also extraordinary, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. "Father Michel, you?" Suddenly, the worried question from the old Taoist priest Kingayan interrupted his thoughts. "Huh, Father, what's that glowing thing on your hand?" Kingayan asked in surprise. Suyun was slightly startled and quickly put his right hand behind his back, calmly saying, "I'm fine, let's continue." Kingayan looked at Father Michel with suspicion. He felt like he had just seen something glowing on the other's hand, but after glancing at his hand behind his back and seeing nothing, he could only let it go for the time being. He shook his head, thinking he was just seeing things, but a sense of unease arose involuntarily deep inside him. He had felt that Father Michel was a bit mysterious from the beginning, and now he felt even stranger. Just as he thought of this, a glint of light flashed in his cloudy eyes. He noticed another incredible detail. He realized that although Father Michel was dressed so lightly, just as he said, he was fine, and there were no visible wounds on his face. Strange, bizarre. Could it be that the piranhas aren't biting him? Recalling the scene with the bats and now the strange disappearance of the piranhas, he was even more suspicious. Could it be that there really is a divine protection? Suyun's lips twitched slightly. This old Taoist priest, whom he had encountered while playing the role of a sword immortal and now the priest, was staring at him with those piercing eyes again. "Is there something you need?" Suyun looked at him gently. The old Taoist priest immediately shook his head. He didn't want to think about it for the time being, so he turned around and continued walking. However, even so, he secretly prepared to keep an eye on Father Michel. Suyun's lips curled slightly, and he followed. However, what he didn't notice was that his injured right hand, which he had been hiding behind his back, had healed after all this time, but a drop of pale golden blood had still seeped onto the surface of his skin. The pale golden blood swayed, detached from his finger, and fell into the water beside him. Drip. A ripple appeared on the water's surface. Chapter 101 Legendary Creatures. Suyun frowned slightly, glancing at the water's surface. He noticed the drop of blood. However, seeing it was just a single drop, he didn't pay it much attention. The pale golden blood dripped into the water, slowly swaying and sinking. Surprisingly, although the blood should have been diluted by the water, the result was unexpected. The pale golden blood not only didn't dilute but also remained in its bead-like shape, as if water and fire were incompatible, completely impervious to water. The blood bead emitted a faint golden light in the water, conspicuous in the darkness. At the same time, some more sensitive creatures nearby suddenly felt a primal urge to devour the drop of pale golden blood. Driven by this feeling, they swam quickly towards the location of the pale golden blood. A struggle began. Undercurrents surged, and the fish, having just swallowed the blood, was instantly torn to pieces by other creatures before anything could even happen. The blood stained the surrounding water red, and the stench of blood filled the air. The struggle intensified until, a long, thick black shadow swam swiftly in an S-shaped pattern. Its massive size created a current that dispersed the blood, putting immense pressure on the creatures vying for the pale golden blood. They instinctively wanted to run, but the allure of the blood held them back, leaving them hesitant. As the shadow drew near, a gaping maw opened. The creature whose blood was closest was swallowed whole. Suddenly, the hesitant creatures went berserk, desperately attacking the enormous shadow. However, due to its size advantage, their attacks were largely ineffective, and they were instead devoured by the shadow. A moment later, the underwater world returned to calm. The outcome was clear: it was the long, thick black animal. This animal had a slender body, a large size, and 4 claws protruding from its body. As the pale golden blood was swallowed and slowly seeped into its body, its form underwent subtle changes. Unfortunately, the blood was too scarce, and its size was too large, so the modification to it was only minimal. The shadowy creature seemed to sense this as well, and a sense of unease arose within it. It swam around restlessly like a headless fly, causing the river water to churn. After running for a minute or two, Su-Yun and the others successfully reached the end of the narrow rocky path. Haha, we escaped. That was close. That scared me to death. Damn fish. Ouch, it hurts. As soon as they reached the shore, the group immediately erupted in joyful shouts of relief. Is everyone alright? Wu Wei asked the group. I'm okay, I'm not dead, but it hurts a bit, Yang Dali sighed. I have some medicine here. Me too. They had made ample preparations before coming, and everyone had brought some medicine. They took out wound medicine from their backpacks. Fortunately, although the fish's teeth were sharp, they were too short, so the wounds were not deep. I almost got disfigured, Chen Ling complained as she applied the medicine to the live streaming equipment. Sister Chen Ling, it's good enough that you escaped. Exactly, you're really lucky. I feel like it wasn't luck. Did you guys notice? Those fish suddenly disappeared. As they talked, some netizens revealed this, and the others thought about it and felt something was off. The piranhas just vanished? There must be some special factor. Otherwise, why would they give up the meat they had in their mouths? The netizens all agreed. Chen Ling shared the netizens' speculations, and everyone fell into suspicion. Yang Dali, nonchalant and grinning, said, we have a priest here, maybe God is protecting us. Zhao Yuang and Xiao Wei rolled their eyes at him, their expressions somewhat annoyed. He's always talking about impossible things. They were thinking that if it weren't for this idiot, they wouldn't be in any trouble. But speaking of God, everyone's gaze subconsciously turned to Father Michel, and after seeing that he was completely unharmed, holy crap. How did you do that, buddy? Yang Dali immediately moved closer to him, his expression exaggerated. The others were also very surprised, all falling into shock. Could there really be a God protecting us? Xiao Wei murmured to herself. That's unscientific. Professor Wang was completely bewildered. Perhaps God really exists, Zhao Yuang thought hesitantly. Looking at the unharmed Michelle, the group, who had initially disbelieved in God, were now somewhat skeptical. How else could they explain this unscientific scene? Yang Dali sighed. Brother, I wonder if it's too late to convert now. I think your church might be missing a pope. King Guine the old Taoist and Wu Wei stared intently at the mysterious Michelle. Su-Yun revealed a faint, gentle smile, about to say something. But just then, a huge splash of water rang out. This sound immediately attracted everyone's attention, and all eyes turned to it. Roar, accompanied by a huge beastly roar, a dark shadow emerged from the water. What is that? Looking at the monster, whose head alone was about half a meter thick, the group was shocked. The dark shadow finished roaring and happened to see the group of people standing on the shore. These strange creatures immediately attracted its attention, and in its current agitated state, it charged straight towards the crowd without a second thought. Wu Wei and the others froze for a moment, then reacted swiftly, driven by their survival instincts. Oh my god, run! Yang Dali, his face filled with terror, turned and ran first. The others weren't much slower, immediately turning to follow Splash. A dark shadow leaped out of the water, splashing a large spray of water. With a swift movement of its limbs, it pounced towards the group. As its form emerged from the water, the group, who had involuntarily turned to look, clearly saw the monster's true appearance. It was a creature entirely black, with a snake-like body, 4 eagle-like claws supporting its weight, a flattened head like a crocodile, and whiskers like appendages near its ears. Just one glance was enough to freeze the archaeological team members in shock, because the monster's appearance was far too similar to a creature, a legendary creature. My god, a dragon, Yang Dali exclaimed in astonishment. The others were no better off, their faces filled with disbelief. Am I seeing things? I'm seeing things. We're not watching a live stream. Is this a movie shoot? Oh my god. A legendary animal has revealed itself. You can imagine the shock it causes. But, as they watched, some people noticed something was wrong. This doesn't seem to be a dragon. Thanks to what brings you here, Fanjian, for the 100 Kidian coins reward. Chapter 102 Ferocious Dragon-Shaped Monster. Some well-informed netizens recognized the creature. However, they remained uncertain, as it resembled an olm, one of the animals most similar in appearance to a dragon, earning it the nickname cave dragon. The olm was first discovered in the 17th century, initially leading people to believe they had found the larvae of a dragon, even convincing them they would grow into giants. However, olms do not develop into dragons. Instead, they remain juvenile throughout their lives, their bodies resembling small, white, pinkish snakes. Some research teams even believe that olms can live for over 100 years, effectively conserving energy by slowing their metabolism and limiting movement. This static behavior allows them to go for years without food, water, or movement, sometimes requiring only one meal every 10 years. Of course, these were all referring to very small creatures, completely different from the enormous, slender, black, and somewhat mutated creature before them. It's an olm? That's outrageous. Is it sure it didn't grow on hormones or fertilizer? Netizens were shocked. Putting everything else aside, the sheer size of this monster alone made it a new species, and such a massive one that was unscientific. While netizens were in shock, the archaeological team was facing their greatest crisis. The monster was clearly preparing to attack, and with their small arms and legs, humans could easily be killed. Suyun frowned slightly. This dragon-like creature surprised him, but he felt more troubled. Given the physical condition of the archaeological team, they clearly couldn't escape the monster's pursuit. Panting, they exerted all their strength, desperately trying to shake off the monster. However, how could humans outrun such a massive beast? In no time, the last person was caught. Help, Pangrankian, a woman in her 30s with an ordinary appearance, lagged behind, the monster only a few meters away. A wave of trembling helplessness washed over her, along with a suffocating sense of despair. She didn't want to die. Someone help me, Pangrankian cried out, tears streaming down her face. This desperate cry sent a shiver down the spines of those nearby, prompting them to consider turning back to help. But the thought of the monster's size made them tremble even more, their courage to even turn around almost vanishing, leaving only hesitation on their faces. Seeing no one coming to her aid, Pangrankian grew even more desperate, tears streaming down her face. The cave salamander behind her drew closer, she could almost smell the fishy breath emanating from its mouth. With a scream, she was swatted away by the monster's claw. Bang! Pangrankian was slammed against the rock wall, and after a painful groan, only fear remained on her face. Because the monster had approached her, its eyes gleaming with bloodlust, its jaws wide open. A piercing scream rang out. Suyun moved with light steps, showing no signs of fatigue. His stamina alone could easily leave the monster behind him far behind. Hearing the scream not far behind him, he shook his head, stopped, and turned around. Hearing the scream, the archaeological team members' expressions changed. After seeing Pangrankian slammed against the wall, much of the hesitation on their faces disappeared. Pangrankian can't be hurt, we have to save her, Professor Wang said urgently. Chenling quickly nodded in agreement. Damn it, let's go for it. It's just a beast, why should we be afraid of it? Yang Dali said indignantly, gritting his teeth. Go, Wu Wei, Zhao Yuan, and Yang Dali charged towards the monster. Someone save me, sob, Pangrankian murmured, looking at the monster within reach, instinctively closing her eyes in despair. Was she going to die? She thought to herself. But just as she was in despair, a sudden force struck, startling her so much that she immediately opened her eyes. She saw Father Michel gripping her shoulder and back with his left hand, rapidly retreating. Bang! The monster's eagle-like claws slammed heavily onto the rock, producing a resounding crash. From the force of the blow alone, Pangrankian knew that if she were hit, her fate would likely be. Her heart trembled. At that moment, child, are you alright? Suyun asked her gently. It's nothing. Pangrankian was slightly taken aback when she heard the word child, then shook her head and said in a choked voice, Father Michel, thank you. Suyun nodded slightly, then turned his attention to the monster. Because at this moment, the monster saw its prey fly away and immediately became furious, turning around to chase after the two fleeing people. Suyun easily grabbed Pangrankian with his left hand, his feet were very light, and he lightly jumped away from the monster's claw attack. Zhao Yuang and others who came to help from not far away were stunned by this scene. Seeing that the priest not only carried a person but also dodged the monster's attacks so easily, They were all dumbfounded. Hiss, Yang Dali gasped and said in shock, so amazing. How did the priest train this? Not only them, but netizens who saw this scene also opened their mouths wide, and a row of comments such as "Is this filming a movie? Where is the cameraman?" kept flooding the screen. Trouble, Soo-yoon sighed inwardly. This monster was indeed quite troublesome. Ah, Pangrankian screamed again as the monster lunged forward, almost touching their faces. Instinctively, without thinking, Soo-yoon kicked the monster in the head. Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and the monster was sent flying backward. Pangrankian stared blankly, while Zhao Yong and the others in the distance gasped. Soo-yoon, regaining his senses, looked at the monster that had been kicked some distance away, and then, out of the corner of his eye, saw the stunned expressions of the others. A sense of unease crept into his heart. "Seems like I used a little too much force," he muttered to himself. The monster, stunned by the kick, suddenly flew into rage and turned to fight again. Soo-yoon frowned slightly, not intending to let the monster continue its attack, otherwise its disguise might be broken in the process. Thinking of this, he had an idea and released a bit of his inner pressure. The charging monster, after being swept by the pressure, subconsciously stopped and stood frozen in place. Soo-yoon secretly breathed a sigh of relief. With the level of pressure he had just released, this ferocious monster should have given up, right? However, things didn't go as he expected. After being stunned for a few seconds, the monster suddenly opened its mouth and let out a strange cry. He didn't know how to describe it, but Soo-yoon's face was full of strangeness. He actually heard a hint of pleasure and coquetry in the monster's voice. "Is it just my imagination?" Soo-yoon muttered to himself. The next second, the monster charged at him. His expression changed slightly. "Thank you Ki for the 1176 book coins reward. Thank you OO. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.